This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
5 minutes after 6, a very good morning to you. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. This lovely Monday morning, the 9th day of August, 2021. City Muga.
Yes, Eric Latif.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How was your weekend?
Quiet.
Good.
Restful.
Good. Very good. Nduako,
Yes.
how was yours?
Fine, thank you.
Good
Morning.
Good morning. Were you up to watch the greatest of all time?
I was actually. It was a great race.
You are referring to the marathon, I believe.
Yes. Yes. Happening at 1 a.m.
It was great to watch.
It was great, isn't it? It was also a bit annoying at the end
Okay. Why?
because there were two guys, two Somalis who conspired against our Kenyan.
Against Toronto.
No.
Yeah, he would have come in
They
second.
moved in him close as he was now trying to pull away. They just come closer, all right? And then in the final 200 meters, and you could just see them telling each other, come,
Let's go.
let's
Tactic.
go.
It's called tactic. So essentially, he was their pace setter.
Imagine.
Why didn't he let them be his pace setters?
That was a tough one. It was a tough one. But it was a good one to see Kipchoge do his thing, especially after last year's London Marathon. Seeing him come back to the top of the perch. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely so. We have conversations to take place today. Today is the 9th of August, 2021. It's a Monday. The next 9th of August will be a Tuesday, and it will be a public holiday in the Republic of Kenya. Why? Because at around this time, polling centers will have opened. And people should be queuing on the polls next year,
Good word.
this day.
Should. But are we sure we are going to have an election next year at this same time?
What makes us not to be sure? We operate as if we know everything. Tomorrow is going to be Tuesday.
I am being iffy.
How are you now?
Yes, I'm being iffy.
You're falling into that trap of the
If
people who
it's a
want to
trap,
create
then
that
indeed I'm
iffiness.
falling into it. I don't think it is a trap if all I'm doing is supposing. Suppositions are allowed. All these conversations about changing the timetable for the election, I am not taking it lightly. It keeps coming up as innuendos, as suggestions. It rears its head with some interesting explanation. So I'm not losing sight of it. I think on my part, it would be foolhardy for me to just simply ignore it and say, it's a passing wind. I don't think so. I will have to be proved wrong on this one.
Okay.
Yes.
How much effort do you want? How much time do you want to spend on it? On the iffiness.
Oh, no.
You know, in everything, eh?
No, on this
In
particular one.
everything you choose to allocate your time.
Oh, no,
or your
no,
mind
no.
or your thoughts.
It doesn't occupy my mind. But if the topic comes up, that is my position.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
That it is possible that the elections could be postponed.
It is my understanding and my belief that there is a, not likelihood, there is a great likelihood that the elections can be postponed. That is my position.
Okay.
Yes.
And your position is based on from your own thinking and your own
Innuendo.
looking. So innuendo, but is it also being supported by something else that you're seeing here, great likelihood?
Yes.
Therefore.
Yes.
What is that? That's
I had considered it was just talk and just the sort of political, should we say, conversations that people had.
yes.
Until there was a court ruling an East African court ruling on that particular matter. And I said, wait a moment. Why is this coming now? Courts don't rule on their own. Somebody must have taken the case to them. So the case was taken. So a precedent has been set. Now, that's what got my mind working. That precedent. I said, so the possibility now legally exists as far as that court is concerned. I said, all right. Okay. Let's see how this one plays out. That is where my thinking came.
What was the court ruling?
According to my understanding of that court ruling, was that, I'm putting it in layman's terms, not that Kenya can postpone the elections, but from a legal perspective, there is nothing wrong in postponing a certain election date. That's it.
Okay. Even our own constitution says there's nothing wrong with postponing an election. It's the reason and the procedure that matters.
It is true.
If there's a state of emergency and if all those are followed, then you can postpone an election. Barring that,
all I'm saying is, in my view, it is not. Remember, I'm not saying the election will be postponed. No. I'm simply saying that on the scale of things, from being not a remote possibility to being no possibility whatsoever, it has gone up the scales.
So let's look at what the court actually said, right? So the African Court on Human Rights in Arusha gave countries a green light to postpone elections over COVID-19. It ruled that treaties signed by African Union member states allow for postponing of elections in the event of a disaster that threatens the well-being of its citizens, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, which has caused the deaths of thousands on the continent. But any government that wants to postpone elections must do so using the laws of its country. This means that if a country's laws do not provide for postponement, lawmakers must come up with regulations to define and govern the process.
See? Talk. It's like saying, yes, is it possible for City not to come to work? Of course, yes. What's the process, though, of City not coming to work? All right?
No.
And what are the reasons behind it?
That law has existed since our constitution came into being, the understanding that given certain conditions, the law could be changed. But the conversation around it, specifically because we are changing guard, I have never seen the tempo of this particular conversation gaining momentum. It doesn't come out. It's not a campaign rally talk. No. But it keeps coming up. And the people who bring it up are lawmakers. And in this country, unfortunately, this is how my thinking goes. Anytime a suggestion is too frequent, I stop seeing it as just somebody shooting off their mouth.
It's a possibility.
Immediately, I stop seeing it.
It's planting a seed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gently, but very steadily. Yes.
Gently and steadily planting a seed.
Yes.
Okay. So let's start the conversation with the COVID-19. Are the numbers strong enough for us to postpone the election?
Well, we're looking at a Sunday report of 800 cases. Usually, it would have said, okay, the weekend and not as many. But from a sample size of 6,530 tested in the last 24 hours, 800 were tested positive for COVID-19. Positivity rate is now at 12.3%. Total infections rising from COVID at 211,828. Still looking at cumulative tests in the country of just over 2 million. All right. 32 succumbed to COVID. So we're looking at additional 32 having been recorded over the last month until yesterday. So we're looking at all of them being late deaths reported after conducting facility record audits in April, May, June, July, and August. Pushes the
all of them are late deaths.
All of them are late reports of deaths that occurred between April and August.
How did we get here? How did we get to a point where we are now reporting? After all this time, we are actually not able to report in the last 24 hours. This is what is happening.
Still a mystery. I do not understand. Because we're in August and we're looking at record audits being reported in August of deaths that took place in April, May, June, even July. That is coming out in August.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I just
can
don't get
understand
it.
that a death occurred somewhere out of the center, But a death occurs, and that's information that you can transmit immediately.
If a death occurs and it is established that this was a COVID-19 death,
Yeah.
first of all, burials are taking place within 72 hours. Let's even say within a week.
Let's say a week.
Okay.
Or 5 months.
But by the time the person is actually being interred, it has already been determined this person died of COVID-19 because there are no samples that are taken off bodies and then being tested later. So, how are we saying that something happened in April? The government in all its machinery did not know until the 8th of August. How?
It's a mystery to me. Je ne comprends pas. I don't understand. And we're not talking about some of these 32 deaths. All of them are late records. Late records.
Do you know, if I may enter the realms of conspiracy, if you are thinking about the situations that could make it possible for us to postpone our elections, then I will have to say that there's something very sinister about the rallies that these leaders keep having. Because the consequences of those rallies are known. It's not guesswork. It's as clear as daylight can be clear. And the tempo is increasing. And if you notice, our capacity for managing ailments, whether they're COVID-related or not, are reducing significantly because COVID numbers are rising. Forget being stretched. Our health facilities are overstretched. So, and do you see any slowing down of political meetings, rallies? Do you see any slowing down?
Nah.
No. So, in addition to just the normal no distance, social distance keeping that we ourselves maintain, it's being spiced up. And anyway.
We'll get into that realm, actually. Let's do that. Let's have that conversation in the 8 o'clock hour, right? And ask you to tell us why you think there's a high likelihood that elections will not take place exactly a year today. All right? At 7 o'clock, we'll have a conversation with somebody who is well-versed in election monitoring. And this is from the ILOG. He'll be joining us at 7 to look at the key timelines and the key dates between now and August 9th, 2022. What needs to happen? Political party nominations. When should people resign from office? When should IEBC procure ballot papers? When should they arrive? Who should do what? When should the IEBC commissioners be sworn in? And all that. Good morning. It's now 17 minutes after 6.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Mama Vera, you look so relaxed. How do you manage to get your children to school in this city? There's too much chaos on the roads, and I'm always late for work after taking Kevin to school. It's a daily logistical nightmare.
Hey, Mama Kevin, have you not heard of Maramoja Transport? They pick my children from home to school and bring them back in the evening. Vera does not have to wake up too early in the morning and after school. She gets home very energetic and has enough time to do her homework. Even her grades have improved.
Thank you, Mama Vera. Hapo umenichanua. This back to school, I will enroll Kevin on Maramoja Transport.
Maramoja Transport is a community-powered mobility platform with 6 years experience serving top corporates in Kenya. Maramoja's school transport solution is ideal for parents and school administrators alike, guaranteeing you peace of mind, accessibility, and safety for your children. Register today by visiting our website on www.school.maramoja.co.ke or email us on maramoja.maramoja.co.ke. Save more, stay safe, and no stress. Get more with Maramoja.
They are stealing every opportunity that you should have. They are stealing your health facilities. They are stealing all the progress that you planned for your child. They are stealing all the benefits that university students should have. Your livelihood is slowly being taken away from you, which means your life is also being slowly taken away from you as you watch.
Cut through the noise and stay in the know by texting the word TSR to 22840 to receive these and more highlights and insights from the Situation Room directly to your mobile phone. Don't miss out on the latest from Kenya's biggest conversation. SMS TSR to 22840.
Nairobi's mostly
The
cloudy this
weather
morning at
with
14. It'll go to
SpiceFM.
highs of 24 and lows of 14 today. Cloudy conditions at 13 in Nyeri. Highs of 23. We'll see highs of 23 in Nakuru as well. It's cloudy at 14. Light rain at 13 in Eldoret. Highs of 21 and lows of 12. 18 will be the low in Kisumu today. It's raining at 19. It'll go to highs of 25. Rain showers at 17 in Kakamega. Highs of 25 and lows of 14. We'll see highs of 28 in a rainy Mombasa. Currently at 22. 24 and rain showers in Malindi. Highs of 28. 25 will be the high in Kampala. That's mostly clear at 19. Cloudy conditions in Dar es Salaam at 21. Highs of 29 and lows of 21. 6 will be the low in a warming up Johannesburg. Currently at 13 degrees to go to highs of 23. It's raining in Lagos at 25. Highs of 29. 30 will be the high in Kinshasa. That is clear at 21. Sunny conditions at 28 in Beijing. Highs of 31 and lows of 22. We'll see lows of 15 in Paris. It's mostly cloudy. Highs of 24. 21 will be the high in London. It's mostly cloudy at 15. Will come down to lows of 14. And Sunday night in New York is cloudy at 20. Coming into Monday, we will see highs of 22 and lows of 20.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
21 minutes after 6, and very many people already logged on to our live stream, SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
That is true. Diana Mboro is tuned in from Kitangela this morning. Charity says hello from Nakuru. Robert Mbogo is tuned in from Mombasa. And Bridget Odor is also in Mombasa. Pacey Powell is tuned in from Kampala in Uganda. Justice Omonde is tuned in from Kondele, and he's with Beryl Odinya. Abel Kabinga is tuned in from Nandi Hills. Good morning, watching you from Lusaka, Zambia. That's where Alieta Mwape is. And King Joe II is also in Zambia as well. Lynette Wafula is tuned in from Thika Town. And good morning, Benson says, from County 001, where one young CT went to do many things earlier. Okay, Otieno Odero Jr. is tuned in from the Great Wall of Kino. And Kev Santana, rise and shine, he says, folks. Nanyuki's online this chilly morning. Koleka Boys is tuned in from Humansdorp in South Africa.
At where?
Humansdorp.
Spell it.
Humans drop. That's in South Africa. All right.
And Natasha Lindo says she's tuning from Jamaica this morning. Straight out of Macha, that's where Beda Ashley is. And Kevin Kipsang is tuning from Nanyuki, enjoying the conversation this morning. Asante Sana. We will not forget Henry Malumu, who's tuned in from Kibera. And Makwara Western Bushere is a greeting, isn't it? Is it? Yeah, it's a greeting for good morning. You see, this much I know. That's where Pascal Kwena Kijana is tuned in from this morning.
If you want to say good morning, you say Makwara Western Bushere.
No, you say Bushere.
Okay.
It is now Pascal who is saying Bushere to us. Why am I even answering you? I beg, Joe. Good morning to everybody, and thank you for joining us today.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Get yourself ready. 365 days to the general election. City, today's proverb.
If two wise men always agree, then there is no need for one of them.
It's very true.
If two wise men always agree, then there's no need for one of them.
I actually did not know that was the direction that was going. Oh, yeah, I like it.
You like it,
I
eh?
like it very much.
Good. Okay. Karibu sana kwenye kipindi cha leo kila mtu. Let's take a look at the headlines. Yes.
Quite some, of course. Eliud Kipchoge right there on across media. Kenya ranked 19th overall with 10 medals, 4 gold, 4 silver, and 2 bronze. Kipchoge did the thing quite well. He crowned the medal hunt with a gold and crossed that line alone. It was really great to see. He led the pack essentially on the last day of competition at the Tokyo Olympics, and then was able to help Of course, he was doing this amongst many others who were able to hold Kenya up there. Faith Chepngetich, who did very well in the 1500 meters women. Emmanuel Korir, gold in the men's 800 meters. Women's marathon, Paris Jepchirchir also won a gold. Silver men's 800, Ferguson Rotich. Men's 1500, Timothy Cheriot. He got that silver. It was great to see. A silver in the women's marathon was Bridget Kosgei. And the women's 5,000 meters, Helen Obiri got that silver. And the bronze steeplechase, Hivin Kieng, also she won there. And the men's 3,000 steeplechase, Benjamin Keegan. And it was really good to see. I don't see Kipyegon here for some reason, but she also did very well with the gold in the race that she won. So that was very good showing at the end of it. I guess you were right when you said the Olympic starts now, when the Kenyans get on the track. And they did very well. And Eliud Kipchoge kind of, after the London Marathon yesterday.
Who are you not seeing with a gold?
Yes.
Faith.
Oh yes, Kipyegon. Yeah, there she is. It's the same.
Which
it's
Faith are you looking at?
Chepngetich.
Why?
Kipyegon.
It's because she uses for competition. She uses Kipyegon. Here it was not used as Kipyegon. That's what confused me. But it is her, right? So yeah, with the dismal performance in the London Marathon, and we remember that he had that balance issue in his ears, which is why the reason why he gave. He kept running at that point. He couldn't keep up and just had to keep jogging it along. But he couldn't explain the reason why he couldn't move until the race was done. So, clearly now, balance issues all sorted out. And he got that gold and did very well with that. So, a good ending to the Olympics.
The man who won the London Marathon, Kitata, was the first to exit the marathon in Japan.
Yes.
So it happens.
He also had a health issue. Yeah.
It does.
It happens. It was a beautiful thing, though, to see the closing ceremony ending with Kenya's national anthem being played twice. Everybody recognize. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, you see, all the stories now are looking at, Kenyans did well. Elias Makori, who's the Nation editor, saying, Kenya shines as curtains fall in Tokyo. Kenya featured prominently yesterday as curtains were drawn in the Olympic Games. This may cloud everything else, all the other concerns that were being raised earlier, in terms of how did we perform in our main races? How did we perform in terms of team tactic? 1,500 meters, men. How did we perform in the 3,000 meter steeplechase? How did we perform in volleyball, where we do very well? The fact that, Eliud Kipchoge did this and we had 2 marathon golds and may cloud everything else.
It's like the euphoria arises from relief.
We got something.
Goodness,
under the door.
because
At least.
it looked like we were really,
Gonna be beaten everywhere, left, right, and center.
Because when you say, for instance, in the track and field events, we were number 3. Okay.
Enough. Yeah.
No,
Worldwide.
Yes,
Yeah,
worldwide.
In athletics, yes.
Medal standing on the continent, on top. That one, we latch on to, we hold on to it, and we don't let
We're
go.
best in Africa.
Now,
Look at Ethiopians, for instance. They only had 1 gold.
you see, and then what also sometimes I think mars this view is when we go to the World Athletics, because that one is just athletics now. Okay, there's no cycle riding,
There's no swimming.
there's no bungee jumping, there's nothing. Okay, that one we tend to do really well because it's just athletics. And as Eric puts it, we ignore the other sports that we have Kenyans actually not just working hard at. By the time that we get to the Olympics, okay, I'll hold that conversation. Then there is the management of our sports. And here it's sports, not athletics. This is something that must be talked about at great length. Because we haven't gotten over this matter of our sports officials being more important than the sports individuals themselves.
I think there are a number of issues here. I think there's also the issue of, for the longest time, Kenya has held this position, middle to long distance running, as the ones to watch. But if this Olympics is any indication of the fact that there are a lot of countries who are not sitting back and saying, well, we'll try our best, but we're going to come second to Kenya. And I think it's very clear. 1,500 meters, the 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters, it was clear. Steeplechase, it was clear that these guys are not sitting back and allowing it to continue to be the case. Look at the 1,500 meters. A 20-year-old boy from Norway, you would never have imagined that he would have given Kenya a run for their money, but that he did, came out and took the gold. And they're not the only ones who are sitting back. And I think for all the disciplines as well, whereby it's a lot more than just training at T10 and hoping that your natural ability will take you to the podium. Times have changed, and people are doing a lot more than just training on the track, applying science to the game, applying science to the sport, and it is clearly working. So, yeah, management needs to look at how do you manage this thing with the natural abilities that Kenyans have, but at the same time, how do you take it to the door of competition?
How do you keep it at that point? When we have a Kenyan who just by sheer luck goes and becomes the world champion in javelin, what do our sports managers do? Have we seen the development of javelin? Have we
seen other people
have
coming
we seen
up
other people being groomed and being told, okay, so you guys learn from what this guy has done. Let's see if we can add more support to this. Let's see if we can actually bring in a coach, a manager, somebody who can train you better. Have we seen that? We don't.
You had people like what's this fellow who runs for Great Britain now, who has retired a couple of times? Mo Farah lived 9 out of the 12 months of the year in E10, but didn't come alone. Came with his physician, came with his nutritionist, came with everybody, and had the support of the British government right here. 3 months goes to see his family, comes back and trains. And then what do you see? Don't you see the results?
In fact, the race that you're talking about, the marathon, the two runners who are from our neighboring country but are now citizens. I'm speaking like an African here, but are now citizens of those foreign countries.
It was
Belgium
funny.
and it was Belgium and who?
It was Belgium and is it Holland? But
Was it the Netherlands?
Yes, I'm not sure, but foreign countries. An African country is not a foreign country. It's just your neighbor next door.
Yeah.
Okay. Now they're training partners.
They are.
Yes. These are people who train together. Now, we seem to be wanting our athletes to be relegated to the realm of templates that people look at when they want to understand how this thing ought to be done.
Yeah.
But the students soon overtake the template.
Yep.
It's true. What did Chelimo say? Chelimo, who now runs for who now is a citizen of the United States and runs for the US and actually won 10,000. What did he say? Taking on US citizenship for his sport was probably one of the best decisions he ever made.
Because he got all the support that he needs.
Yes.
Time for a break. 28 minutes to 7. Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll come back shortly to look at more newspaper headlines after we take a look at traffic. What's happening on the roads? We'll tell you shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
At NCBA, we know it's more than card transactions. It's the limitless possibilities. Call 0711 056 444 or visit ncbagroup.com for more information on banking cards. At NCBA Bank, the numbers that matter to you matter to us.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul,
And it's picking up this
and
morning already. We still
nostalgic
see some of
ballad.
that traffic on Jogo Road heading out into the city, coming out of Westlands. James Gishuru and spilling onto Wayaki Way. The Red Hill Link Road is not looking too bad right now. That traffic that usually is the case right about now on Mombasa Road around Imara Daima is not too bad. It's moving along quickly, not too much of an issue. Langata Road, from all indications, is performing very well. We only see that little bit of traffic right around the T-Mall roundabout. Hopefully it doesn't get much worse than that, but we're going to have to take a look-see in a short while and see what it looks like. Okay, coming on Thika Road, actually, no traffic. All the way from Survey through to the Pangani underpass, unless my eyes are deceiving me. It doesn't look too bad this morning. Hopefully it remains just so for most parts of the morning. But we'll keep an eye on that as well. Are you stuck somewhere or are you having a hunky-dory time getting into the city and out? Let us know. SpiceFM KE on Twitter is how you get in touch. Text on 40127.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, so there we go. 25 minutes to 7 o'clock. What are you looking at? You just tell us what you're looking at.
I am looking at the Business Daily.
Okay.
There are two articles here that have caught my attention.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Headline: China firm seeks billions before giving Kenya SGR. There is the Chinese operator for the Standard Gauge Railway.
Yep.
Right.
What is it called? Africa Star.
Africa Star Railway
Star.
Operations. Yes. But it is also a subsidiary of the China Road Construction Company, just so that you understand. Now, there's been talk about them, Kenyans, wanting to actually take control of the railway and ensuring that we are the ones who run it. But according to what Parliament revealed, we have to date not paid 38 billion to Afristar. Okay? So we owe the money. Billion, not million. So the understanding is that if we were to pay this, then we would actually get control. Now, these discussions didn't begin this year. I'm not reporting something that started this year. The discussions began in 2019.
For takeover of the operations of the railway.
But
remember when
Certain
you had
amount of money must be paid.
when you had the MD and the chairman of Kenya Railways, they actually told us that June, this past June, was when they were going to start taking over the operations.
Of course they did.
And we asked them, but this is a few years short of the contract that you've signed with Afristar. And they said, yeah, but also the contract allows us to start taking over operations after, was it 2 or 3 years?
Yes.
And they said they've already given the notice that they're going to take over. So they haven't paid 38 billion shillings.
No.
How should it work? Should it not be that the operator should be paying Kenya Railways the 38 billion shillings because you're operating the thing, you make money, you give me money?
Remember the
Why
story.
am I paying you to operate?
I think you've gotten to the heart of the matter, and this is what I was getting to. You see, this discussion about contracts of this nature being made public so that people understand exactly what we were committed to. Because someone cannot claim to be paid when we know they're the ones who collect the money unless it's a contractual issue.
Yeah.
There's a way in which we were contracted. So it means you build the railway, we owe you something like 420 billion as we speak. But at the same time, even as you collect, we still have to keep paying you. Now, strange.
Very.
Strange. So there's what the government pays to the banks.
Yep.
And then
which is where the 400 billion shilling
goes to. And then there's Afristar.
Right.
So you're thinking, wait. So what are we paying for? What is the government paying for? And what are these other payments that we need to make? Now, it may be very clear and simple and straightforward, but it doesn't seem clear and straightforward to me. Because it seems like every opportunity to pay for something we are paying for. And it isn't clear why it was structured that way and why we're having a conversation about Afristar, whereas in my mind, if money was borrowed to build the railway and to get the engines, then it should be we are paying back the loan, period. The loan should include everything.
There was a whole issue of, at the time, the conversation was, so there's this railway that's coming, so we need to bring in somebody who understands operations. Remember, our Kenya Railways guys had, many of them who are experts had retired, who had not done a lot of training in terms of even working with them. So bring in a company to run the operations of Kenya Railways, be the ones to make sure that the trains are on time, make sure that everything is running smoothly. And because at that point it's not making any money, they have their costs. So you cover the cost. The question is, how do you quantify those costs? Can you basically say that it costs you 12 billion shillings a year to only run the railway? Or are you also talking about how much money you're paying to buy fuel, how much you're paying to accommodate your staff, to pay the salaries, all those things? And if that's the case, if it costs 12 billion shillings to actually run this thing, would Kenya Railways be able to raise the 12 billion shillings from its own operations? Those are very many questions.
They are, and I think they will keep rising. The second issue,
Second story.
CBK gets powers to control mobile loan rates. I will simply read it out.
Read.
MPs have offered the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK, express powers to control lending rates of digital mobile lenders under a proposed law which will see the regulator control their products, management and sharing of borrower information. The Parliamentary Committee on Finance and National Planning approved the Central Bank Amendment Bill 2021 and added a clause that gives CBK powers to price interest rates on digital loans. Meaning, right now they don't. Yes. But given that this bill has received a nod from this committee, this bill is going through.
Bas. It's a good thing. I think that conversation has been there for a while.
It's
right?
been there for a long time. And there's been pushback, of course, from the fintech companies.
Yeah. Although from their umbrella body, they've been saying they're fully in support of this because it helps them also to know how they're operating.
Yep.
Plus, it removes all the doubt and all.
It does.
I mean, we are regulated by the CBK. So, I mean, if you're charging E23, CBK has already agreed for us to charge you 23.
We are allowed
so, I mean,
to do. We're operating within.
If you take your name to the CRB, I mean, the CBK requires us to take,
They already take names to the CRB anyway.
Yeah, and that's why now, if now they take them under CBK regulation, they'll really, it's a requirement.
These are CBK regulations.
These are, if I don't take your name, my friend, I'll lose my license.
Yes.
So I've got to take your name. You pay or you...
If there's one thing that probably required a lot of, not just public participation, but an understanding, is the role that these institutions that help with regulations play. See, when people are listed, there's a whole hue and cry. And yet you can't be listed unless you owe and you haven't been paying. Okay? So some of these things need to be understood so that even if someone is complaining, they know full well this is what's really happening.
You're right.
So even if I'm complaining, I know I'm complaining just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
And I feel they're being unfair.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm actually on that list.
Something interesting happened. Remember, CBK had put a freeze on that listing, isn't it? And we kept reading about debts just piling. When that cap was lifted, debts went down. So it serves a purpose.
It does.
When you're talking about the railway, there's a story coming out of City Hall. Nairobi MCAs want City Hall and the Nairobi Metropolitan Services to establish a light rail transit system in the city. And they're saying, in a motion approved by the House, that the two entities should undertake feasibility studies to determine the viability of this project. This motion was sponsored by Hospital Ward MCA Patrick Musili, who said light rail system will help reduce traffic congestion and pollution. He was quoting, for example, the example of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, which has a light rail system with 39 substations, and it is moving 60,000. There's an issue here. I don't know.
Just make it 60.
Let's just say 60,000 people per hour. The MCAs are calling on City Hall and NMS to establish a multi-agency technical committee to conduct a study and determine the economic viability of this project. Now, remember, as we talk about all these things, there is an organ, a body in Kenya called the Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, NAMATA. That is supposed to be looking at the entire Nairobi metropolis, not just Nairobi County, but the neighboring counties of Kiambu, Kajiado, Machakos, which other one? That one, Nakuru. And see, down.
We got it.
Down, even Muranga at some point. And look at how do you harmonize traffic within this larger Nairobi metropolitan area. This body is in operation. This body should have been conducting these studies that we are talking about. This body has done a couple of studies, actually, according to Musili. He says a 2019 NAMATA report ranked Nairobi as the fourth most congested city in the world, with traffic jams costing the country about 100 billion shillings annually. Costing 57 minutes, takes 57 minutes to commute within traffic in Nairobi compared to 15 minutes in cities that have established a light rail system. It's a good motion by the MCAs. I'm just wondering, so where does NAMATA lie? Where does NMS come in?
And
where does City Hall come in?
But of interest, we had this conversation with the PS
Hinga.
Yes, they've done that work. It's not as though, remember we asked the question.
Yep.
And he said, look, not only did they have conversations, but they have done the work. Now, what I fail to hear from this conversation is, have they had this conversation with the parent ministry that deals with these things? Because in all honesty, this work that they want done, this survey that they want done, has been done.
Yep.
Yep.
I think what they should have been demanding is they should be asking City Hall to have those conversations with NMS and come and report. NMS, Namata, City Hall, to come and report to Parliament what is the plan. Don't say to establish a multi-agency.
No.
Waste of time. And we
So
should stop it.
every time I hear that, unfortunately, it's a red flag.
Yes, there's somebody who's pushing an agenda and they want to bypass another.
Yes,
process.
or they want this story of let's conduct some finding.
That's where plans go to die. You want to kill a plan?
Form a committee,
Form a
a
task force.
multi-agency task
Multi-agency
force.
one at that.
Right? Multi-agency task force to look at this matter and report and create. It's a quarter to 7. Let's take a quick break and we look at more headlines. Good morning.
You know, when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say, I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us to assert our will.
When the legislature are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality. We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi Lokop is Jeshi Lawokov?
I can't say it very well. You know,
And everyone knows. Okay.
Right, this is the Situation Room.
So the state has been told to expand schools amid worry over congestion. All right. We also saw that the state at the same time had extended the time for admissions into Form 1 for another week or so. So we see that going through to the end of this week, whereas it should have stopped on the 6th. There was no time.
They should just extend it to the end of the month.
There was no, it was just crazy what we saw in terms of the attempt at a registration and all this mess from schools that didn't exist to names that were not on lists. Government said, all right, let's give it until the 14th and let's see what happens. But now, stakeholders have warned that the country is courting disaster with the congestion in secondary schools that has been worsening every year following failure by the government to expand its infrastructure. Concerns on security, health, safety, administration, and discipline have been flagged as some boarding schools now have over 2,000 learners. Over the past 4 years, enrollment in secondary schools has risen sharply because the number of learners leaving primary schools has been increasing every year. However, the growth has not been matched by expansion of facilities. We talked about this a little bit on Friday and said, you know what, this is great. You have a new education policy, you have 100% transition being touted, but at the same time, the building, the boxes where you're going to place all of this have remained the same.
Yep.
You want to progress, you want to do better. You can't have new wine in old wine sacks. It skins. It can't happen. So they're saying, look, if we are saying that we're going to improve the policy, we are saying 100% transition, we have more students every year.
Match it with the
infrastructure.
I mean, this is a question that started in 2003 when Mwai Kibaki came into office and he had made a political promise that primary school was going to be free. And George Saitoti, the newly appointed education minister, said it starts immediately. Teachers, not wanting to sound like they're against this whole new wave and all that, they're like, okay, it's okay, but please make sure that we look at infrastructure. That conversation has been taking place since
2003.
Have we expanded infrastructure in our schools? Then Uhuru administration comes in and they say 100% transition. we're seeing this now. I mean, it's completely ridiculous to imagine the kind of things that we see in the schools. I went to a school that when we were in school, I think we were about 400. The entire school population in a 200-acre piece of land.
Now?
Right? Now, it has 2,000 students. And the only thing that has increased in Mangu High School is just some, I think, 2 dormitories and a dining hall that was donated by an old boy who went and said, all right, so let's build a new dining hall to help. Infrastructure in terms of classrooms? No. Anything else? No. I mean, you just ask yourself, so from a population of 400 to 2,000, and nothing has happened in terms of infrastructure development.
You wonder. And it's interesting, because this also tells us that the Ministry of Education has elaborate guidelines on construction and capacity of classrooms and dormitories of all the schools in the country.
Yes.
They are aware of what it looks like. They are aware that this one can fit so many. They know what needs to happen then in terms of expansion. According to the stakeholders, however, this has been outlooked as the pushes for 100% transition have overtaken the need for expansion. Nicholas Mayo says, we worry that in case of an outbreak of COVID-19, for example, it would spread very fast. Also, in case of something even worse, fire, where will our children run to?
Yep.
Honestly, this is something that we can talk about on the surface, but it is actually quite serious. That we are packing children into schools like sardines, and we're not worried about the case for expansion. Could be a disaster
Do you
in the
remember
making.
the story we mentioned in passing regarding Sigalame Secondary School?
Yeah.
It's an old school, genuinely old. Now, the issue of renovating that school has been under discussion for the longest possible time. And reports that I hear, they say, and even what was in the papers, they blame the fire on an electrical fault. Thankfully, there were
Students
no
were not
students in the dome. But that fire raised that building down.
To the ground.
Well, the moment you have these mattresses that are used, those things,
Tinder.
combustive. So, there are very many schools that have also been in existence for the longest time. They are not renovated. They are not upgraded. But let me pause and just tell you this in case you didn't know. Do you know part of government funding also has to do with the development of the school?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
And this one has to be said, schools do get money.
But the question is, how much and what is done? For example, you know this because you chair a school.
Yeah.
The money that you receive, what is it able to do?
Can you build a
In a
new
year?
dormitory, for example?
Sorry?
Can you build a new dining hall?
What can it do in terms of
can it
infrastructure?
do?
What did you
Instead
ask
of
again?
Dormitory.
Can it build? Please repeat that question again.
Can it build? This is the question. This is the thing. Schools receive money, but what can you do realistically
So let's just
with the
then
money
come
that is
realistically.
given?
How many chairs are you able to buy? How
Okay,
many desks?
chairs,
Because
desks.
that's it. That's the most you can do, buy chairs and desks.
How many?
Okay. I know, for instance, there was a year, the last time I heard of that money arriving, there was 800,000. So now,
For the whole year.
now do the maths.
What's the population of the school?
The school, right now, it should be 150. Okay? It's a day school. What you want to do, you want to paint the school.
Yeah.
We had some makeshift kitchen which wasn't doing very well, so you want to make it a proper
Kitchen.
You want to improve on the toilets. Okay? Then some of the buildings were never completed. So you want to now make them, spruce them, make them look nice. So you're asking, can you build another classroom? By the time you're through with just renovations alone, I do not think you'll be able to build
You
anything.
can't.
Which is why I think it is important, because you know what? The claim would be, for example,
There's
from
money.
states that we give money
And
for
in fact,
renovation
they'll
and
give it to
expansion.
you in totality. They'll tell you, out of the 800 billion shillings in education, 40%.
We give. You see, that's the top layer of the story. You get inside and there's nothing.
Yes, but since we're having a conversation, I must also say that when it is given, it isn't commensurate with the time when it was asked for.
So if you have a leaking roof today,
No, if I ask for 800,000, don't think it was for the year that I'm asking when I need it. It'll come later. So by that time, it has been overtaken by many events.
Usipoziba ufa.
Utajenga ukuta. Yes, I was going to think usipojenga ukuta. No, usipoziba ufa,
utajenga ukuta. And now they're bringing it to you at that point when you did not ziba the ufa. So you have to deal.
Ufa is whole. Ufa.
Ufa. Ufa is a roof.
Ufa is roof.
If you don't seal the leaking roof, you will have to
build a wall.
Build a wall.
Voila.
You see? Okay. There's also the other side of now these education officials. The officials who see they have standards on how infrastructure should look like. Somebody was giving me a story of how they had decided to go to a school in their neighborhood and decided, all right, so how do I support this? I would like to support this school because it's in my neighborhood by building a new set of classrooms. Set aside and said 3 million shillings is available to build a classroom. Okay? Education officials come. Now, this one now, the design of the classroom, now this one design, you see now the design. He ended up spending 10 million shillings.
Get out of here.
To build a classroom.
Aye. Bit expensive, isn't it?
Just a tad.
Those education officials, you see now, Mzee, this one now needs to be, this is the material that needs to be built. This is what, by the time he was done, he says 10 million shillings had gone into building a classroom. So he was like, look, if I wanted to support really, would I really
you wouldn't come back.
Go back and support this particular school?
Nah.
I'd be saying, okay, I did my bit. Let somebody else also take up a 10 million shillings and build an extra classroom.
It's possible to have built it, probably much less. You could have done the 3 with that.
Yes.
It's very possible. I think that's another thing. A lot of these inflated costs and unnecessary things.
Because they are the suppliers. These officials are the suppliers of the material. This material needs to be this specific, done in this specific way. The fundi has to be approved.
10 million shillings for a classroom.
Yep.
Come on, you can build the house. Plus.
Yep. My dear, it can build a school.
Hey, Bana. What are we talking about?
Yep.
Remember when you're building classrooms, it's only the first classroom that has 4 walls.
The other one is
3.
Yes. And you have what? One continuous roof.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, issues. Slain brothers to be laid to rest on Friday as new officers take over. You know this story. It's a story we're giving us on Thursday. The 2 brothers who died at the hands of police will be buried on Friday at their home in Kithangari, Embu County. Felix Ndhiga, the family spokesperson, says burial preparations are underway and they've agreed with the church to have the burial on Friday. At the home, workers are busy putting up tents where mourners will sit. The death of Benson Jiro, who was 22 years old, and his brother Emmanuel Mutura, 19, sparked protests in Kanjokoma town. Now, what has happened since then is police have been moved. The Deputy Inspector General of Police, Edwin Bogwa, visited the area. He ordered Embu North Sub-County Police Commander Emily Ngaruye and OCS Manyata Police Station to be redeployed to Eastern Regional Police Headquarters, pending investigations. You know what that means? They're being taken to Moyale.
Yeah, but that story is finished.
That's why we deal with them.
Yeah, that story is dead.
Or Turkana.
Moyale, Eastern Region.
My friend, those guys can take you really far.
Senior Superintendent of Police Abdullahi Eden took over on Sunday morning as the new Embu North Sub-County Police Commander. He has worked as a staffing and operations officer at the Eastern Regional Police Headquarters in Embu. Acting Embu County Police Commander Kimani Mitugo said a new OCS had also been deployed to Manyata Police Station. That is how we are dealing with that issue.
Is that how to deal with it?
Yes.
Is that how to deal with this issue?
We are dealing with that issue
because
that way.
Because essentially what you're saying is that something untoward happened and this is the punishment that we are giving. Is that commensurate to the suffering that happened? Is it? These 2 young men, lives snuffed out.
The issue
Nobody
of saying,
is being
for example,
given a reason.
interdiction
What
pending
happened?
investigation.
Akuna, you know very well that it's not going to happen.
If you want to understand this issue, take a cue. Ilifanyika.
Makosa ilifanyika.
That's it. That is an apology, an admission
and everything
of guilt,
wrapped all in one.
And a summary and a finalization of the issue.
That
in that statement. Done.
Stand it. It drives me mad. I can't stand it.
Let the boys
and that
be
everybody
buried.
is supposed to understand that this is investigation, it's indictment, it's punishment, and it's a sorry all at once.
Actually, they don't really care whether you understand it or not. You just, even if you don't accept it, just shut up and let life continue.
Hawa polisi hawa walikuwa hapa, hawa ni wabaya, wacha watoke.
Then they go and do the ubaya somewhere else.
Tutawashughulikia, tutaona hii maneno. Tutaona hii maneno. And also, you are moving the senior police officers. Yes, they are in charge. How about the junior ones? The ones who actually did the arrest.
Yeah.
The ones in whose hands these young boys
died.
Whether they jumped out of a moving vehicle, whether they were clobbered by somebody in the vehicle, whatever.
Blunt force trauma is what they said.
When we had this discussion and open to the public, one of the things that people talk about, well, 3 things came to mind. One,
let's talk about the 3 shortly, right? Because you're going to the top of the hour. Ati, breathe in air, exhale oxygen. What's that? Sigor on Twitter says, Ufa is a crack. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Sawa. Good morning. It's now 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
The news at the top of the hour on Vibes Radio.
Good morning. This is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. World record holder Eliud Kipchoge says he fulfilled the legacy by winning the marathon for the second time. Kipchoge said it was his happiness and inspiration for the next generation. The world record holder clocked 2 hours, 8 minutes and 38 seconds to win gold in the marathon. This was his second consecutive gold medal at the Summer Games, having won at the 2016 Olympics in Rio, Brazil. This is even as Kenya topped in Africa with 10 medals, which included 4 gold medals, 4 silver medals, and 2 bronze medals. As PSVs today begin recovering the cash lost during the period they carried 60% of passengers, a number of Kenyans have expressed mixed reactions over the move. This comes as the government allowed them to carry passengers in full capacity as from today, as long as they observe COVID-19 measures.
Naonelea si vyema kwa sababu idadi inaendelea kuongezeka ya corona. So mimi kama mwananchi nitaumia. Naona imesaidia. Ile wakati walikuwa nabeba less capacity walikuwa natuumiza sana. Lakini naona watatujali.
Kama kuna yule atakubali kukaa na mwingine akubali na kulipa hiyo pesa 700. Lakini una uwezo wa kulipa 1000 na utaki kutangamana na watu, kuna gari nyingine kando.
Nauri hakuna vile itakuwa chini sababu na maana diesel iko juu.
The next general election is exactly 1 year away today. On this day next year, the theme will be Kenya Decides. President Uhuru Kenyatta will complete packing up his bags, ready to hand over State House to Kenya's 5th president, possibly one of the 6 men who have dominated the political space besides during his now 9-year period in office. Eyes will be on Deputy President William Ruto, ODM leaders Raila Odinga, Wipers Kalonzo Musyoka, NC's Musalia Mudavadi, KANU's Gideon Moi, Ford Kenya's Moses Wetangula, among others. With 4 months left to the end of the year and with the government targeting to vaccinate 10 million Kenyans against COVID-19, they launched a mass vaccination drive this weekend in Nairobi County. Hundreds of Kenyans turned up for the mass COVID-19 vaccination drive test. The Ministry of Health launched the exercise after it received 182,000 COVID-19 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine from the Greece government. Here are some of the Kenyans who got the job.
Nimefurahia sana kukuja kupata vaccine hapa.
Juu ugonjwa inaua na hii chanjo ni bure. Ningehimiza kila mtu akuje achanjwe.
Wakenya waliweza kujitokeza kwa umati mkubwa. Tunatarajia Embakasi pekee itakuwa na watu zaidi ya 10,000 hivi tukifunga zoezi hili.
Weekendi tunapata watu wengi zaidi cause inapata kama kila mtu ako kwa nyumba na itakuwa suluhisho.
That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
A lot can change in just half an hour. We're already seeing traffic that has now piled up considerably on Jogger Road today. We're also seeing quite some on Lunga Lunga in industrial area. It doesn't look too happy right now. Also, Langata Road, where it was just a little bit, is now packed all the way from the turnoff at Bomas through to the roundabout at Timor. We're also seeing some traffic that has built up now on the Thika Superhighway, and it was looking clear before, but not so much right now. It's not too bad though. Building up right around the Pangani underpass, but nothing too crazy. Then right around Muthui Square there also it builds up some. So traffic is not too bad this Monday morning. Hope it remains just so. Just in case it does, let us know. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's 5 minutes after 7. A very good morning to you on this 9th day of August 2021. Getting into the second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. CT, today's proverb.
If two wise men always agree, then there is no need for one.
If two wise men always agree, then there's no need for one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
It does.
It does.
A lot of sense.
I mean, if you were to take that argument to its logical conclusion, every time you are in a gathering and someone begins a statement is Kenyanese. Mine is to say a few words and to agree with what everybody has said.
Yes.
You would expect at that point they sit down, isn't it?
Yes. Right.
God.
They continue.
Mengi yamesemwa na sina mengi ya kuongeza. Lakini jambo moja tu.
And 1 hour down the line, we're still here.
Our guest this hour is Mule Musau. He's the national coordinator of the Election Observation Group, ELOG. He's been here before. Welcome again, Mule.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, the team. At least I never got to meet him in the last time.
Yes.
It's an honor.
Thank you, sir. No, the honor is ours. The honor is mine. Yes, thank you.
Now you get to meet the
the full squad.
Yes,
yes indeed.
Yeah. So, Mule, I was just telling these guys, reminding them, pointing it out to them, that the next 9th of August will be on a Tuesday. It'll be a public holiday. And at 6 a.m., polling centers, stations should be open and balloting should start. People on the queue voting in the next general election. CT says, looking at the recent developments in terms of pronouncements by people in various quarters, he's looking at it and saying, yes, but there's also a possibility that we may not have that election. What is the headline in the Star, CT?
Fresh plot to delay 2022 grand election. Now, I didn't inform them. We haven't had this discussion with them.
It was not you.
No, it wasn't me. I'm not the culprit behind this. But this has been my thinking. Yes.
What informs this, Mule? When you from an election observation group, of course, you observe even the conversations that take place before the election.
And that's an informed perspective.
Yes.
I would put it in 2 words: political shenanigans.
Wow.
Because we are very clear in terms of when the next election is expected to be. As you have said, it's going to be on the 9th of August 2022. Any other variation from that date is basically a move by the political elite at their own convenience. I mean, something that is going to be organized on the basis of their own convenience. But it's going to be a very, I think it will be a very long shot, if you ask me, in terms of whether you're going to make the changes. Our laws envisage only a situation of emergency, which would call for the need to vary an election date. The kind of elections we've had in this country and the kind of engagements that you have over the last 3 or so elections are so protracted that any change, again, would nearly call for a serious soul searching by whoever attempts that. And we know, of course, we know that the incumbents, we know that there are actors who may be strong enough to
influence
to wish. It is actually the wish of any incumbent to extend their time in office. Power is sweet, as you know, so nobody wants to leave it. But it's also the wish of the people who want to come in, that they want to have it at the earliest possible time on leadership. So I do hear the political grapevine in terms of, yes, or COVID, or there'll be excuses that we cannot be able to have this election in good time. We know there was an advisory which was given by the other day, which was given by the African Court in terms of governments or citizens can actually think through it. Should this COVID become such a problem, you could try to reason out, but the reasoning out still has to be within our laws,
within the law of the nation,
within our our own.
Our laws allow for an emergency.
They do.
Mule, emergency tunaweza create.
We actually
emergency too.
We're actually creating one as we speak.
There can be emergency
with COVID, but even before we go to the emergencies, there are people who are actually quoting our constitution when they put forward the argument. This particular article quotes former KANU nominated Senator Paul Njoroge. Paul Njoroge quotes two statutes. Article 124 of the Constitution. He argues that the 5-year presidential term begins the day he was sworn in. That's his argument.
Yes.
And he's saying if you have to follow that argument, then the 5th year will end next year in August, not this year. That's his argument.
Those arguments, by the way, so that is one argument by Senator Njoroge.
Yes.
That says next year is when the 5th year ends.
Yes.
There's also another argument by a journalist who actually works for that media house that you're quoting, The Star, Oliver Mathenge, who's even been going out on Twitter saying that 5th year ends today. Not next year.
Yeah, but I think
counting is a big issue in this country.
Yeah,
numeracy.
We have to have a semblance of understanding of what it means, because in any case, we have from a logic point of view, sometimes we make it too difficult that we have to go too technical. Oh, can we count this to the other? We know if we work by from a de facto state, in terms of this is how the season has been. It's going to be on the 5th year. The 5th year is this year. Now the question of whether it ends today and therefore today, the 6th year begins, or it ends on the 8th, because there's argument on the 8th of August next year. That's when the 5th year ends, and then the 6th year starts. So having it on the 9th is on the 6th year. I think they are neither here nor there, and I think there's going to be my take is that there's going to be an advisory by the Supreme Court in terms of that date, and it will be confirmed in due course. So I would not worry so much about the different dates. I'll be more worried about what you've just called creating an emergency, because that one is something that we are capable of doing anyway.
Sure.
But although the law is also a little bit, there's some level of clarity that when you're talking about emergency, we are nearly talking about a state of war.
Yeah.
Right.
Now you nearly have to look for something nearly equal to a state of war, and COVID could be.
Or disease where people are dropping off the face of the earth.
COVID could be,
yes,
depending, of course, on the levels that we are talking about. But there are levels also we cannot accept to go to an election with. I mean, there's a situation in the country where when everybody is dying left, right, and center, who wants to go to an election? Yeah, so there are things which could give such a circumstance.
That's the circumstances you refer to are what I was insinuating. I personally think, and I begged my colleagues here to allow me a little conspiracy theorizing, when every day, with the exception of what I'm reading, the Olympics, it's a beautiful break, okay? Beautiful break. Rallies literally every week, all over the country. Either people have gone to Naivasha in supposedly smaller groups, or they have met at the DP's residence, and there are 100 of them, and that social distancing is the greatest rumor you can come across.
It's a rumor.
Then you go to the coast. The president is there. The handshake partner, the Honorable Raila Odinga, is there. Before you know it, there's another. It goes on. This is what I'm saying. The emergency is being created because
it's just not coming fast enough.
It will come. Yeah? It will come because all these rallies, these are grounds where we are growing the virus and we are growing mutations.
Are you almost saying that these rallies then are intentional breeding grounds so that said emergency can be created.
I am saying that they may not have started as that, but in my mind they are. Because I would have assumed that people who, by every utterances that you hear, every utterance, they are concerned for the people. In one hustler notion or village notion or whatever notion they have, they are concerned. And yet, everything that they do when passing on their messages contradicts, it negates everything that they are talking about.
I think there is a scenario there which within the election space we have been calling a permanent campaign practice in this country. And it is not happening just in this electoral cycle. It has been happening even in the previous ones, especially where there are those. We have had three close elections. And it is nearly imposed on the person who wants to contest the next election to start the next day after the election. Yes. Because you need to have a head start and momentum. So it has been happening. I think what the city is describing here is much more of an accident. Philosophically, when you call an accident that we've been having this, but through this accident of this happening, then we may do the spread without that being there, because nobody wants to die. I mean, I don't think the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga wants to die in this process, because he may be. I mean, this COVID is not choosing anybody anyway. So you don't want Kalonzo and all the other. Nobody wants to go out there and die in the course of this matter. But because of the need to be on the ground, the need to make sure that you make your head starts and you get your momentum going. And that's one of the reasons why I think, in my view, there was a need for the referendum, because the referendum also is part of this momentum building. And once you have a referendum, then the groundswell and whatever support you get from that easily carries you over through the election. So now that we are also still in a state where we don't know whether this is going to happen or not, then it makes it very difficult for them to stay away from the platforms. They want to be there. They must remain visible. Otherwise, then the stakes become very evened out, and nobody wants that.
But legally, even in the case of an emergency such as this one, so let's say war or disease, like what we're having now, a pandemic, what would be the steps for actually legally postponing the election? What needs to happen?
It has to go to Parliament.
Who takes it to Parliament?
It is taken, such a situation, the Ministry of Interior or the Ministry of Defense, if it's talking about a war, they would have to be able to bring it to Parliament, to present through the government. The government brings it to Parliament. It is discussed by the two houses, and there must be an overwhelming majority to be able to make a decision. Both houses must approve that this is a state of emergency situation, and therefore be able to approve the same.
By overwhelming majority, we're talking about two-thirds. Is it specific?
Yes. Two-thirds, yes. Two-thirds.
Of each house?
Yes. Because that's a clear, that's one of the most difficult things to be able to rush through Parliament.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Looking at all of this, and maybe even deep, what I would be worried about is the rationale behind wanting to postpone an election. Because clearly there would be a motive in all of this. It's not just postponing so we can sit around for another 6 months and do something else. There would be a rationale behind this. And I think that would be what would be the issue for me. Because now, are we seeing that particular administration wants to hold on to power a little bit longer? Particular administration wants to then see that they're able to rally the troops in terms of a new political dispensation and needs more time to be able to do that. What would be the reason that could even be understood by anybody who was considering it as to why this would want to happen in the first place?
And that's what I'm saying. Unless it is a situation of emergency, and the reason why there's also a very high threshold for that is because it must be something which is understandable by everybody. So if Parliament was to approve a state of emergency situation, it means that it is something which is very apparent everywhere. So that is the only acceptable situation. Of course, the innuendos and the schemings behind the scene is a question of somebody maybe wants to use this as an excuse to stay in power. The incumbents always desire that. But then again, there's always going to be the push of the other side, which wants to come into power, that you cannot be able to extend this beyond reasonable time. And that's the reason why, with that threshold, knowing that we have well, we have an opposition. It is expected, I would expect that Raila and his troops, they would not want a stay of the situation beyond 9th of August. They would want it as soon as possible, because a day in a politician's life is long enough for things to really take another dynamic turn. Raila may be a leading candidate today. Give it 2 weeks, somebody else takes over. So nobody wants those variations, those variables to be at play. So I would expect that the only reason would be a genuine reason why we have to postpone an election.
What
and
if,
I think we've explained
another
that.
conspiracy point, what if there's no parliament?
Well, that's another. Well, that constitutes an emergency by itself, because remember we have an advisory from Maraga, the Supreme Court, that Parliament needed to be disbanded because it was unconstitutional.
And that hasn't expired, has it?
No.
It has no expiry date.
It has no expiry. It's an advice. So the president can consider at any time. By the way, come to think of it.
I had been advised.
So, and those are the same. In fact, I remember we had a conversation around the time that Maraga gave that advisory and the silence from State House and said these are the cards that are usually kept somewhere in a drawer. Say, I got my advice.
That one is kept in a safe.
Yeah, they are kept somewhere. I say, well, we're not speaking about it now, but should it become necessary? Then these are something you can be able to draw. But then it also look very imprudent of the president, in my view, to disband Parliament at the end of the term. You know, it doesn't make what sense. Yes, you've been given an advice that this thing is not properly constituted, but you have an opportunity to right that wrong within a month's time or 2 months' time or 3 months' time. Why do it? There would be the wrong impressions.
Consider, we are reasoning rationally, assuming that politicians reason the same way. Political thinking doesn't lend itself to this sort of rationale.
That's true.
That is a tool that is not kept in a drawer or safe. It is used perennially. Because if the president, if there's something, a gift that Maraga gave the president, in my view, it was that advisory. It is the most beautiful gift any president can receive. Not you deciding, the Supreme Court telling you, here is the power to get rid of these fellows anytime you want. So, to me, it's a continuous bargaining chip. And it is better than anything else the president could have had. Because you know why? The Supreme Court gave it to him. It is not his. But he has the power to use it. So whenever you talk about something going to Parliament, my mind goes and say, the president only needs to express a wish, no matter how remotely, and the message will be sent because they know what he can do.
But you know, the other aspect of it is that disband Parliament now, and you're going to be forced to nearly have an election. Within 60 days or so, because now you're talking about a nationwide by-election. So that nearly, and that gesture is tantamount to opening up ourselves to a general election. Now the question is, now the president has to weigh. What are the implications of this in terms of whether I'm benefiting or I'm not benefiting?
From a constitutional, from a legal perspective,
yes.
If we didn't have Parliament, does it mean we have to go into an election, legally speaking?
Well, you have to have a representation. You see, our democracy is a representative democracy. Unless you want to turn into a dictatorship, we express ourselves through our legislators. So if you don't have Parliament, then the people are not being listened to. So that means, that basically says you're in a dictatorship. Somebody is controlling everything.
It's unconstitutional to have Parliament.
Yes, you need to have Parliament. And we know that the laws say that if you don't have a parliamentarian, within 60 days, IBC is supposed to be giving out a writ which says we have vacancies. So we should be able to conduct 290 by-elections across the country. And somebody ran to court and say, why are we having 290 by-elections across the country when we are just about to have a general election? Why don't we have a general election?
And the matter will be in court, won't it?
Of course.
And can we control the length of time it will be in court?
Well, now that's subject not to the legal.
I think you get where I'm going with my thinking.
And then in the meantime, the power remains.
And in the meantime, you're not earning a salary. And in the meantime, everything about you that relates to your well-being as an MP comes to an end. What am I saying? I'm merely emphasizing that advisory is a powerful tool. That's all I'm saying.
So it can arm twists.
You're very clear, City.
Getting the 2/3 vote, you can use this particular advisory, just wagging it and saying, we need to extend the life of this parliament. And we have an emergency called COVID. We need 2/3 majority in the National Assembly to pass this thing.
Let me tell you something.
Please.
See, right now, what stops? You've had the debate between within the Jubilee party, for instance, where
Jubilee.
Okay, that's what I mean actually, because you're coming to that question.
Yeah.
So from where I speak, I'm speaking about Jubilee because there's a party called Jubilee. From where they speak, they could be talking about two different factions. But that problem, why are we not having an impeached deputy president? Why are we not having those members of parliament? And remember the process in which they can be dismembered from those political parties. Then we have to go to. Why is that not happening? There's usually a kind of detente, a kind of peace accord between people because they know the implications. There's always a political rider to this. The president, as he works these cards, and he has something in the safe, as it is saying, he knows also there's a political implication of even producing or producing those cards in the table at some point. And part of it is something that we were reminded in 2007, that the country can go into anarchy. And there's nobody, no incumbent president who wants that situation, because the problem with that is you're no longer safe.
Even you
lose control.
Even you as a president. So I think because of the fact that the kind of protracted engagements in the political space are such that there is nearly a truce, that let's just make sure that things are going on normally so that this other card, the ugly one,
does not have to feature.
Does not have to feature. So I think that truce, in a way, can keep the thing going in terms of making sure that normal services are the ones we are having.
You're very kind, and I believe the truth makes sense. But I would argue it's self-interest that actually it comes into the truth, but it's self-interest because if you're talking about habit acquired over time and which has featured as the norm among our legislators, is this keen sense of self-interest. Very, very keen sense. And if you're talking about an emergency, let me tell you why my thinking went this way. The first time I ever heard of the term curfew was when you're in a state of emergency. Okay? Now, we've had curfew. So it means we were in a state of medical, health, clinical emergency. That's why I was furthering that argument and saying, forget many other reasons that you may require. COVID may provide you with that perfect excuse that you're looking for.
But also you need some proper support on the ground. Because today, if you came out and said, let's delay this election, even within Parliament, there are people who are willing to go into an election, not for many other reasons, but because they think that with their alignment right now, they're best positioned to retain their seat. With their alignment right now, they feel that this is the best time. If every new day is an opportunity for somebody else to emerge, and everybody goes into an election feeling, I'm prepared. I'm riding a good wave, whether you're riding a wave of Tanga, Kieleweke, or handshake, you're riding a good wave where you can still come back. I think you need a lot of support on the ground as the leadership of the country to agree to the calls for an extension.
And technically too, you see, if you're going to use COVID, you must provide data, you must provide information. And in a country like Kenya, there's no monopoly of information. You cannot be able to say that the government, which is going to be giving us statistics, is going to escalate the situation to an extent that we think things cannot work.
Yeah.
As of today, it has opened up public transport for matatu wajaze watu. So already there is a de-escalation of sorts. So you have to really ride it up. And if you're going to ramp it up with numbers, it must be numbers that Okia Omtata is not going to find a problem with.
Yeah.
He's going to, and any other person who may decide to follow up through.
There must be obvious numbers.
Yeah, there must be very clear numbers.
Okay. So we're having a conversation about next year's general election, the preparation for it. Are we ready for that election? We've started with the conspiracy theories. I mean, we've been seeing them. This not just conspiracy theories, actually, but moves and statements by people arguing that we should be postponing. Somebody has gone to court, a former senator has gone to court, and he says, the next general election should statistically be on the 9th of August 2023 and not 22. And Mule Musau is here with us this morning. So next we're going to look at the numbers, the critical dates that we have ahead of the 2022 general election. 7:30, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. What's happening on the roads this Monday morning? Nduoko will be telling us. But first, tell us so we can tell everybody else what's happening on the roads if there's anything of concern that needs to be known. And as we do this, remember, you can get all the conversations that take place every morning in the Situation Room on your mobile device, either by going into social media, SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or via SMS. I'll be telling you how shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Hello.
Halo, umesikia?
Nimesikia nini?
Hujasikia habari? Hebu acha nikuambie. Kile kimetokea.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Don't wait for hearsay. Dial *550*1# to read the Standard e-paper from the convenience of your mobile phone for only 20 shillings from your telecom line, and stay up to date for a reliable source with over 100 years of experience with no additional data charges.
Hello.
Halo, umesikia?
Nimesikia nini?
Hujasikia habari? Hebu acha nikuambie. Kile kimetokea.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Don't wait for hearsay. Dial *550*1# to read the Standard e-paper from the convenience of your mobile phone for only 20 shillings from your telecom line, and stay up to date for a reliable source with over 100
The sun is
years
coming out
of
in Nairobi at
experience
14,
with
highs of 24 and lows of 14. Cloudy conditions in Nyeri at 13 with highs of 22. We'll see highs of 23 in Nakuru where it's cloudy at 14 and mostly cloudy in Eldoret at 14, going to highs of 21. 25 will be the high in Kisumu where it continues to rain at 19. Also rain showers around Kakamega at 20, highs of 25 and lows of 11. Light rain in Mombasa at 22, it'll go to highs of 28. It's also showering in Malindi at 24 with highs of 28. 25 will be the high in Kampala where it's mostly clear at 19. Sunny conditions at 21 in Dar es Salaam with highs of 29. We'll see highs of 23 in Johannesburg, clear at 14 will come down to lows of 5, and light rain at 25 in Lagos with highs of 29. 30 will be the high in Kinshasa where it's clear at 21, and that'll be the low for today.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. SpiceFM.
Spice up your life.
All right, normal Monday morning as we see industrial area on Lunga Lunga, then headed outbound. It's actually quite packed, right? A little bit here and there on Enterprise Road, going the back way. And then also looking at Jogo Road where it's packed between Makadara and Botella, and then going out towards Landis Road. Langata Road, we saw that it was doing good before, but not so much anymore. Jam-packed all the way from the turnoff at Bomas through to the roundabout at T-Mall. That's not looking very exciting. You have to sit through this one specifically. Also, we see some traffic on Thika Road now, but nothing too crazy. Coming into the city, it should be all right. Coming out of Westlands, also a bit of issues here and there, but nothing too crazy. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text us on 40127. Let's keep things moving this Monday morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
26
Nairobi.
minutes to 8. Kenya's biggest conversation continues in the Situation Room this morning is Eric Latif, Nduoko, C.T. Muga, and Mule Musau, National Coordinator, Election Observation Group, ELOG, counting down 365 days to the next general election, 9th of August 2022. As we look at that countdown, Mule,
yes,
what are the critical dates that we should be looking out for?
The big date itself, 9th of August. So everybody now works with that. Of course, pending any determinations by the court otherwise. So we're working with the 9th of August as a big day. There are a number of key dates that are important, starting with the date where fundraising ends. That is on the 9th of December, usually 8 months before the election. So
what does that mean?
This issue about looking for money for the elections, whether it was Harambes or whatever it is, you don't have it after that, because any attempt to look for money after that must be scrutinized further. Because we're talking about an election.
How will you monitor the process?
There is a problem with that, a big problem, because remember, one of the issues which just happened last week was that the campaign financing bill was presented to Parliament on Thursday.
Last week.
It expired on the 9th. That was, is it today? No, on the 8th, that was yesterday.
What do you mean expired?
Expired is this, that for you to have regulations on how to regulate campaign finance, yes, it must be in place 1 year to an election. So it was presented on Thursday last week, and then Friday, Parliament does not sit. They'll sit over the weekend. They'll sit on Tuesday, tomorrow. So it's technically overtaken.
Why present it so late?
Now, this is a bill, if you remember, which was presented to Parliament in 2016, and for the same reason, it was suspended.
Yep.
Now, if it was presented to Parliament in 2016, it means that, yes, it expires, but it is in Parliament. Okay? So you cannot say, there's no excuse for Parliament to say, oh, you know what, we don't have the bill. It is with you. It is expired, yes, in terms of that election, but it is resident. In any case, IEBC made some amendments to the same bill, and they presented it to Parliament in last year. So now you can't say, what is the excuse of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee or any other committee which is in charge of such matters? So that's why, as City says, it becomes the framework now for dealing with campaign finance becomes very difficult. But nevertheless, the date is 9th. Of December. How we'll sort it out is a question of discussion.
Okay.
We have 6 months to the election. We expect all public servants who would want to run in the election to resign. That should be on the 9th of by the 9th of February. And then on the 14th of March, we have a gazette notice on the election. So the confirmation from IEBC that the election is going to be happening on the 9th of August is going to be confirmed, on 14th of March. The big dates, again, after that, we have political party primaries, which usually the election before the election. They are expected to conduct their primaries at the very least 90 days to an election. So based on the timelines which have been given, because based on the regulatory agency, ABC and the ORPP, they have set out April 16th to 22nd as the date for party primaries. But there's a discussion point there, because the next date, about on the 9th of May, we expect that independent candidates have resigned from political parties. Why that is a discussion is that it is a window which was given, which was created. It's part of the debates that people have been having in terms of our elections, that an initial law which created the need for anybody who wants to become an independent candidate to have resigned at least 3 months before was waived, and now we have a situation where political parties can do their nominations, and then the losers have about 2 weeks in which they now can run to IBC and register themselves as independent candidates by 9th of May.
Was in the initial conversation saying that independent candidates should not have participated in party primaries. I mean, wasn't that the thing? So that we avoid party hopping. All right. So one, we avoid party hopping. And also, second, we make sure that independent candidates are people who are truly independent. They are not aligned to any political party.
And that was the idea behind having the 3 months caveat. Because you see, when you say 3 months, that means if the party primaries are going to be held on the 16th to 22nd, then they would not be participating in them because they're not members of that political party.
Yeah. Right.
And when you remove that issue, then it opens, it's silent, it doesn't talk about it, but it says, well they have rigged me out and I have no other place to go. And I have every right to participate in the next elections irrespective. So you have a window of about 2 weeks, and then you're supposed to present your papers. After that, then the next big dates become the end of May, when the official nominations are submitted to the IBC. So you're having the presidency, who is running that was we confirm because the parties now have chosen papers. There's been a petition process. We have allowed for a petition process, dispute resolutions of these nominations. Then these papers now are presented officially to the IEBC for confirmation into the elections. So that is by 7th of June, that entire process, which includes from the presidency to the MCAs, we have concluded with it. After that, we now start preparing ourselves for the elections because we will be basically having a month or so. There are other dates, though, in between. We have events. We expect the voter register to be closed within, again, 3 months of the elections, so that we can go through, so that's also by 9th of May, so that we have a verification process. About a month is given for verification. Voters can go confirm their names and details, and then we have a certified copy of the voter register after that. So after that month of June, we should be able to have in the last month, that's July, we should be having a certified voter register, the one that is now the one which is going to be used for the elections. The official voter register. The last official. The last official voter register. So it goes to, we got to use it now on the 9th of August.
All these dates, the way you've set them out, these are dates that are in law, in constitution and in law.
Yes.
In the Elections Act as well.
Yes.
Is there any, apart from now this one of campaign financing, which has some question mark, is there any other here that has some question mark, that does not have its regulations in place, that is not, hasn't been tried and tested?
The voter registration, our laws say that voter registration is continuous. If you remember, in the run-up to the last election, we had somebody who went to court and said, well, you have your 90 days, yes, but the law also says that we have supposed to be having a continuous voter register. So when you close out on us, we are turning 18 every 18
day. After that.
Yeah, so how far is how far? How close is how close? Yes. What is the determination of these 90 days? Of course, we expect that we have to close.
As my daughter's... Wait, now I'm going to court. My daughter turns 18 on the 28th of May.
Yeah, so
this means that
they're locked out. Yeah, they're locked out. No. They're locked out.
So can you imagine the joy that somebody who's turned 18, looking forward to actually voting,
to participating in this for the first time?
No, the last time IBC tried to have a closure of the voter register quite early, and somebody went to court and it had to be pushed by some, I think, a month or so, so that more people could be able to register. So the thing is that while there could be some fluidity in terms of some of those issues, but then of course we also understand the need why IBC must lock up the register, because they have to work. Those are the logistics that they have worked with. These numbers help them.
They've got to prepare.
Yes. Whether we want to have polling stations, and remember the polling stations are supposed to be gazetted. About a month to the election, we're supposed to be having all the polling stations gazetted. The determination of those polling stations comes from the number of voters.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you have to say these are the numbers, and because we have put a cap in terms of the number of people who can vote in a polling station, then the new numbers must determine the number of polling stations that we're going to be having. So these are things which follow each other, and logistical planning is also based on the numbers. So there is an understanding. Again, it's about striking a balance within this, but there is a framework of law which has been provided.
So this is also the time by which you should change your polling center if you want to.
Yes.
Because people want to change. I want, for example, last time I voted in Machakos, this time I want to vote in Nairobi. So by this time I should...
You can do that even now. Nobody has been stopped from changing their polling station even as of now, because we have a continuous voter registration process. So if you go to your local constituency election office, you should be able to do these things even as we speak. IBC is starting what they call the mass voter registration process this September. That will be a very good opportunity for anybody who wants to change, because now all hands will be on the question of voter registration. So anybody who wants to make changes, that's the best time to be able to do this.
I'm looking at some of these dates that you're talking about. I'm going to come back specifically to this one for which it lapsed on the 8th of August, looking at yesterday, the funds bill. What implications does it have then in terms of now fundraising? What implications does it have? And then now if you can graduate that to other conversations whereby a date comes and passes and certain things have not been done. Seems as though from what you said that all of these issues can be sorted out, in court. Court gives an order. This can be sorted out if you pass a certain date for certain things, right? Now, this particular one, what implications does it have on the process?
The major implication of not having a regulation framework is that then we cannot be able to superintend over the money which is going to be brought in the election. The campaign financing bill and act outlaws certain sources of funds. For instance, you cannot get money from terrorists to come and run elections in Kenya or to participate. You cannot be supported by a foreign country to run an election. For instance, if somebody is getting money from another country, the chances are then the other country is trying to control us. So there are all these questions about where the money comes from.
Yep.
For IEBC to be able to then regulate or to be able to track these sources, they need to have a kind of a framework. And then they also have to be ceilings. Elections is also about fairness. And you've heard about people who are coming with money from questionable sources, and then the loot is shared out there. It creates a very unfavorable environment, especially for new candidates and aspirants, women, young people. They cannot be able to participate effectively in election because somebody, a sonko somewhere, has everything. So when you miss out on the regulation, the legal framework for this, then you have no basis. Although we still argue that the Constitution under Article 88 still gives IEBC the power to regulate. Now the problem is they'll argue but we have no framework. We have tried to push something in Parliament, but they are not. So that's the biggest implication.
Can someone go to court after an election and say this election was not credible? Because I feel that people with more money than I, that had questionable means, came and outplayed me. Can someone go to court and argue that this election was not credible?
Nobody stops anybody from arguing that an election was unfair in whatever respect, because that should be one of the principles of an election. Fairness and equalness in terms of the vote. It's a major issue in an election. Last time we were discussing about the credibility of elections. That's a critical issue around fairness. How was it a level playing ground? If somebody had more money, and I can argue, and that's where the problem now comes in, is that now the court will also want to dispense of this matter or arbitrate over this matter based on some legal definitions. Now, if you don't have them,
there's no definition of how much is too much.
So
it becomes a problem.
So it seems as though it would appear all right, if I'm going to go into the realms of conspiracy again, is that there's a deliberate effort then not to debate on this matter, because what it does is that it opens up the boundaries and anybody can basically do whatever they want. And because there was no framework initially to define where your funds came from, then you cannot come later and adjudicate over something for which there was no definition.
That's very right. And we've listened to the arguments that Parliament even had in 2016 and some of the discussions even in the run-up to this particular bill being tabled about them not having, or them believing that IBC does not have the capacity to be able to manage the process of, we usually have more than 25,000 aspirants in an election.
Yeah.
When you say there's a law which should regulate money, it means that even the last MCA must be regulated.
Should also be regulated.
But now, some of the provisions in the Campaign Finance Act were that we have disclosure was the means by which you'll be forced to account for yourself, and disclosure was going to be random. So ABC can pick on Eric and say, Eric, tell us where you got your money, and we'll investigate. And if you find there's a problem, then we disbar you or we disqualify you from the election. So that is a measure of control. So
which
you can't
also
say
can be abused.
Yes, of course.
To get rid of certain candidates. Because if I can just come out of this, well, if all of us are vying for one seat, and I just come and ask you, Mule, just prove to me, and I know clearly all of us have unquestionable means, I ask you, prove, or tell me where you got your finances. I find something wrong, I disqualify you. I leave the rest to campaign.
Yeah, but you see, remember, under that disclosure framework, everybody, those 25,000 or 30,000 aspirants are supposed to submit their own, disclose their own sources. So the problem is that IBC will not go to all those accounts, but it may go now. That's why you're talking about it could be manipulated. That they'll go to an account and say, Latif, please explain to us. You gave us this, prove it. And if you have a problem, we find a problem with it, then we'll disqualify you. Of course, in this country, these things can be misused, but at least it allows you a starting point.
Okay.
Now the debate can be, how do we fasten? How do we make it tighter moving forward?
I've got two questions from social media on the issue of voter register. Number one is there a way for someone to check if they are registered or not? One, of course, you'll say going to the IEBC office.
Yes.
Is there any other, like electronic? Like, can I send a message via USSD and confirm my status? The second one was, there's a conversation that happened with IEBC recently where they were talking about needing to procure better servers and new systems to manage their data register and the electoral process. Now, does that mean that they migrate? Have they said that they can migrate the data that they have currently onto a new system should they procure it, or would they be required to re-register everybody afresh?
Well, on the first question in terms of the voter registration, yes, you can be able to check. You can be able to walk into those stations. I would have to confirm, because IBC the last time had, you could also be able to confirm it through an SMS and confirm your registration. I would have to confirm whether that is still active as of now. What I know is that in the run-up to the election, such opportunities do arise. They create the opportunity for you to be able to check. Yeah. But it has to be confirmed whether that is still active up to now. But they usually provide such avenues for confirmation. On the technology, yes, they are required to migrate all. If you're going to buy new devices, then you are required to migrate all the information. Of course, in a very efficient way, making sure you don't lose any data, because that can become a subject of litigation if you lose out on anything. Remember, we only know that we have their register.
Yeah.
So how you move it from a box file into your laptop, into the Kims,
floppy
into whatever
disk.
other copy disks and other things, that's your problem, so long as you do not lose my information. So I think it is the work of the ICT department in IEBC to be able to come up with solutions which ensure that data is not lost.
The other issue is on the issue of the polling centers, polling stations. Which one is which? Polling center, polling station?
Today we don't have anything called polling centers. They are just all polling stations.
Okay.
Yes.
And this is the stream?
Yeah. Every class is a polling station by itself. Usually you have about 8 classes, maybe in Olympic primary school.
Yes.
Each of them is usually a station.
Is a station
by itself. Yes.
Now, is IEBC mandated to increase or reduce the number of polling stations?
Yes. on the basis of the number of voters. So we are expecting, for instance, that we are going to have more voters this time. We were 19.6 million the last time. As we move to the next election, I've seen the targets that IBC is having is around 25 million voters. So again, you'll have to divide by the number of voters per polling station, which is usually 500. So you get the number of polling stations on the basis of that. So it'll vary on the basis of it. The idea is to be as inclusive and as to ensure that as many people participate. You enfranchise as many people as possible. So the polling station must be as close as possible to the populace. So you increase the numbers, you increase the polling stations.
With regards to this electioneering financing, it's still in my mind. Have we had a case of somebody who has been either should we say disqualified, or there may be court cases, and has that limitation to financing, I'm using as gentle a term as I can, has it ever been put into operation? Have we seen it work?
The Campaign Financing Act came into place in 2013.
Yes.
Conveniently after the election.
I like that you said convenient.
Yeah, it was very convenient. After the election. And then we have had it suspended in 2017. We have had it now, looks like it's going to be suspended for 2022. So in that respect, that law has not been put into place, into practice. However, there is we still have the other laws which are attend to corruption. You see, we have also now general laws which attend to the question of corruption, because any sources of money which are from corrupt sources. You've had this debate, for instance, about the deputy president and his trip to Uganda, and the implication of if money was being given towards his campaign or such. So the action can be taken on the basis of this is corruption, this is terrorism, or this is this. So on the basis of that. But that would have to nearly to be taken by other quarters, not so much. Maybe it's called what? The Director of Public Prosecutions Office, DPP, and not so much of IEBC. Unless an issue is brought to IEBC that somebody comes and says, we have every reason to believe that the sources of this particular candidate are criminal. And then an investigation can be sounded off.
You know, I raised this question. There has been this issue of qualifications. What would-be, wannabe legislators need to have in terms of formal education qualifications. In my mind, it's fairly clear. You went to this school or you didn't go to this school.
Right.
You acquired this or you didn't acquire it. And we even have a Kenya National Qualification Authority that does these things. Yet, this thing, which in my mind is simple, keeps rearing its head. Somebody went and yet they didn't go. Somebody qualified yet they didn't qualify. And it ought to be clear. Why I'm saying this is, even if, let us say, the Finance Act include this matter regarding electioneering financing, even if it became law, I am saying it would affect nothing. The way our political situation is and the way our electioneering processes tend to be conducted. It would be there, but
it depends on how the law is enacted. For instance, you see on that matter of Chapter 6 and going to get your certificates from, let's say, not EACC, CID, who taking them to IEBC. What does the law tell those institutions? In the case of EACC, is have you been convicted? Is there? Those are the things that they check. Not are we investigating you?
Whether there were charges, whether they
whether that you have actually been convicted and you have not exhausted all avenues
of appeal.
That's our problem is how we even structure the law.
But there's some point to what he's saying, which is very important. Kofi Annan, in a report that they did in 2012 called Deepening Democracy, a strategy for improving the integrity of elections worldwide, among the 5 factors which he talked about, let me just read all of them. One was the implementation of the rule of law and electoral justice. If you want to have credible elections, that's the standard. Professional and independent election management body, that's another one. The removal of barriers to universal and equal participation, especially for the special interest groups. But the last 2, established institutions and norms of electoral democracy. And the last one, regulation of political finance. Now, those two, the issue of norms, so because you're talking about ESCC, and the other, we call them, all of them EMBs, because the EMB is not just IEBC. The election management body includes even the ESC if it has to make decisions around elections. The Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, because it is making decisions around elections. So those norms, do those institutions understand when they are coming up with whatever decisions they are coming up? Are they aiding our electoral practice and democracy? Are they supporting it? So that they not just read the letter
and apply it strictly.
And apply the letter in black and white, but also the spirit of it, that here we are trying to ensure that the right candidates go through. Because why would the Commission of Higher Education and all those entities who are seated there, why would we still be having people who are without degrees who are appearing in...
Eric, can we have this gentleman for 2 minutes?
After this?
Yes.
Coming to the top of the hour, Mule, stay with us for a bit as we open up the phone lines as well and ask ourselves, are we ready for an election in 365 days? Good morning. It's 8 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. The Turkish national Harun Aydin will today be arraigned in Kahawa law courts even as investigators seek to detain him for 14 more days. Police say they want to investigate claims of terrorism financing. Aydin may also be charged with being in the country illegally. However, DP William Ruto and his allies denied allegations against Aydin, saying they are politically instigated.
I am the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. I cannot associate with terrorists. I know what I'm doing.
You have criminalized enterprise in this country to an extent that investors now will start running away from this country.
Kama kweli angekuwa terrorist, si jameni sisi angekuwa ametuangamiza tayari. Kwa hivyo vitengo zetu za security wawache kucheza michezo ya siasa.
Aydin was arrested on Saturday after landing from Uganda. The two brothers who allegedly died at the hands of police will be buried on Friday at their home in Kihangari, Embu County. Family spokesperson Felix Ndhiga says burial preparations are underway.
We believe the truth will come out soon. As a family, we are only crying to our government. We know it is able, and we want them to do investigation. If there is anyone involved, let them be taken to court so that our late children can get justice.
The death of the two sparked protests that led to the death of one person as police engaged rioters. Deputy Inspector General Edwin Bugwe, who visited the family last week, also ordered for the transfer of Embu North Sub-County Police Commander Embili Garaya and Manyata Police Station OCS. This comes as the family continues to demand for justice even after post-mortem results showed they died from multiple and head injuries.
From the post-mortem report, the Benson one is consistent to what the police said. He might have jumped from the vehicle because broken ribs, and then there's those bruises in his body. But now with the second one, there is not any bruise, there's not any broken rib. He only has head injuries in his body.
Businessman Jimmy Wanjigi now says it's time for a new face to fly the ODM presidential flag. Wanjigi says he's ready to face the nominations with ODM party leader Raila Odinga. Wanjigi also says he is ready to popularize the party in the Mount Kenya region. Wanjigi backed President Uhuru Kenyatta in his 2013 presidential bid.
I have clearly indicated my intention to run for presidency of this country via an ODM ticket. Every period has its warriors and its heroes. We are now going to open offices in the whole of Mount Kenya region. We are going to make sure where it doesn't exist, it exists. We are going to start a massive membership recruitment drive. We are going to do our best to paint the region and the mountain orange.
That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, so we're still looking at traffic in industrial area this morning, getting in and out of the CBD very slow. Lunga Lunga, both directions is jam-packed, as is Langata Road heading out into the city. The southern bypass, the eastern bypass looking pretty good. If you're getting from Mombasa Road going to Thika Road the other direction, you're going to have no problems this morning. It's looking pretty good. Thika Road also behaving very well for a Monday morning, not too much of an issue. A little bit of a sticky situation right around the Pangani underpass and also Kiambu Road joining with Muthui Square. Beyond that doesn't look too terrible. Muranga Road, however, getting into the CBD is tight right about now. And we're also seeing some traffic within the suburbs of Nairobi, a little bit right around State House Road and also coming back into the city. Remember, there's a diversion between Kenyatta Avenue and Uhuru Highway. So we're looking at between the roundabout at Kenyatta Avenue and going then towards University Way. So the diversion there. So use an alternate route if you're not comfortable getting off the tarmac. Okay, let's look at more how it looks in a short while. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127. Let's see if you might be stuck. Share. If you find a good route, share that too.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only
5
way to
minutes after
start
8,
your day.
Kenya's biggest conversation gets into the third hour on this 9th day of August 2021. Like we are saying, counting down now, 365 days to the next general election. In the room with you, Eric Latif, Nduoko, C.T. Muga, and Mule Musau, the National Coordinator Election Observation Group, ILOG. C.T., today's proverb.
Right. If two wise men always agree, then there is no need for one.
If two wise men shake hands, then there's no need for one.
Wow.
That's what you call a really elevated interpretation.
It's rich.
It's a direct translation.
Okay.
What marks agreement in African society? We shake hands.
Yes, but
we're in agreement.
Where does wisdom come in? Because it was two wise.
Yes.
Not two men who have agreed.
No. We now assume. Yeah. It's true. So if two wise men shake hands.
And what makes you think politicians are wise? Why
are you bringing in politicians?
Because when two people shake hands and you refer to a handshake with reference to Kenya, it doesn't get more political than that.
Why have you brought in Kenya? Me, I'm just translating was that a Kenyan proverb?
Have no fear.
I'm only talking about your proverb.
I am the one who has brought in the politicians, and I'm the one who has brought in the Kenyan angle, because a handshake in this country has stopped being a greeting. A traditional African greeting. It's a political. Thank you very much. So you say the moment you bring in handshake, we're discussing politics.
Yes. So now you're implying that two politicians cannot be two wise men.
No, I'm saying since when does the definition of a politician also include wisdom?
Wisdom.
Yes. Since when?
Especially a Kenyan politician.
Yes, since when?
Sheesh. About 1,000 things were said in those 3 minutes.
Imagine. It's just a proverb. It's just a proverb. Hey. As we're going into the top of the hour, we're talking about those things that should be done by the electoral management bodies to govern an election. And you were reading the 5 points that Kofi Annan had looked at and said, if you sort out these 5,
yes,
then, my friends, you'll never have issues about elections. Those 5 again, Mule.
Yeah, the first one was implement the elections on the basis of the rule of law and electoral justice. And of course, electoral justice means that the entire process, people must have avenues to be able to vent. They can go to court they can petition, and they should be able to get justice through that. The second point is having a professional and independent election management body, because again, we have styled our EMB, and I've always said, I've said this a number of times, that in the West, we have EMBs which are located within ministries and departments. They're not independent. We have an independent one here because of trust issues with our regimes, or with our systems. So we want them to be independent, and they also need to be professional, because the confidence, we need to build confidence to the public in terms of how elections are going to be run. The third point is that we have established institutions and norms for electioneering. Those institutions must have established norms. They must participate. They must enhance electoral democracy.
Right.
And it's not just the IEBC. We have the ORPP, we have the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal, we have the Political Party Liaison Committee, we have the Justice and Legal Affairs Committees and the other committees in Parliament, we have Judiciary itself now, which has established the Judicial Committee on Elections. All these institutions must work to enhance democracy. It's not just one. And then removal of barriers to universal and equal participation. That basically means universal and equal suffrage, which is a standard which has been accepted internationally. And then lastly, we regulate political finance, because when you don't have a fair playing field where somebody has more money than you and you're fighting for the same MCA seat, in a country where voter bribery is so rife, in a country where poverty is so rife, and then you're the one who is seen with the handouts, it nearly translates all the time into a ballot for you, which is unfair, because the other person could be a better leader. We've just had the debate about wisdom and politics. So the other one could be a wiser person, the one without money. But then you've chosen just the person with the money. So those are major issues.
Well, you know, there's what you're saying is profound, but let me give you a perspective that I have. Yes, money trumps many things in our electoral system, but that is if, as a politician, that is the route you want to follow. There are few examples, of people who have actually gotten elected and had no money to speak of. True. You cannot say they had anything significant. But if you look at the details of how they went about their politics, they began the foundation by stating that they didn't have money. From day one. And some started by doing things that nobody else had thought of. There's one particular gentleman I like quoting. He is a favorite of mine. He's called John Paul Murigi. Okay? Meru.
The young man.
Yes. You know what that young man started by doing? Something which he could afford. University student, he knows where he comes from. You know these books that teachers use to help students improve, test them? That's what they're contributing. So over a period of time, it was clear that Form 4 examinations results improved in his place. And people started crediting him with these things. So now he's unique, yes, but we know of other people in this country who haven't gone even the party line which guarantees you a vote in certain parts of the country. So, yes, money trumps these things. But where now the wisdom that you mentioned comes in is a politician who realizes, I want to be a candidate, but I do not have this money. So you move your politics away from the money. Most of them don't. They go, they break the bank, they bankrupt their family, they do everything to try and compete with people who have an infinitely greater source of money than they do. And therein lies the folly. So if they approach their politics differently, they wouldn't have money to spend and they wouldn't spend it. And there would be no great loss because there was nothing to lose in the first place.
Siti, let me ask you.
Yes.
Of those fringe candidates who come in not on the promise of money or not on how much money they've spent,
yes,
how many are re-elected?
I have not kept up the numbers, but the likelihood is that they are not re-elected.
And why?
Because they don't have money.
They got the goodwill the first time. Why is that goodwill not extended the second
but
time?
Also another question. I like the point that he's making that we do have an avenue that can be used by people who genuinely want to lead their people without the need of bribing them. But then we look at the percentage of those people, they're very few. So from the wisdom of politics, if politics has any wisdom, then you look for the money. So that you can be able to
you can participate.
Yes, because you see the overwhelming numbers of those who are making it to parliament or to whatever legislative positions are doing it via the use of money.
You have a point. Eric, you asked the question. Can I try and answer it? When they take you and they say, we understood you didn't have money. But now, my friend,
you should have.
You've been a mheshimiwa, surely. And other people have money. So you can't come with that same story, for heaven's sake.
We were supporting you so that you can have money.
Money, yes, so that we can support you again now that you have money.
Actually, if you remember that one of the debates about why members of parliament were increasing their salaries, one of their rationale was that if you go to parliament right about now, they're not in session. But when you go in session, you find, well, even when they still have offices in Continental House. So you'll find hordes of people loitering just around there. So those members of parliament used to argue, do you know how much school fees I'm paying from my pocket? Do you know how much handouts I have to give out So they expect, as City says, there's an expectation that you've gotten into power and therefore you have this opportunity, this largesse of resources that allows you to give out and donate. And therefore, when you don't have it, then there's a problem. If you don't show generosity in that respect, then they're not going to elect you again.
They will not. The issue of financing is big. And by the way, at this point, let's also welcome our audience on KTN Home. You're with us until the top of the hour. Thank you very much for joining us. We're having a conversation about election preparedness. It's exactly 1 year to the next general election, 9th of August, 2022. Our guest this morning is Mule Musau, the National Coordinator, Elections Observation Group, ELOG. And the conversation has started at the top of the hour on the issue of campaign financing. There should be regulations on campaign financing, and the deadline for all candidates who want to vie next year to basically stop looking for funds for their campaign is the 9th of December this year.
Which is today.
9th of December.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm thinking of August.
9th of December.
This
you are looking for money for next year's general election. Put all your kitty into that bank and close. No more inflows. Now just start drawing. However, there's no law because any attempts to bring those laws has just basically been a game. Bill was taken to Parliament last week on Thursday.
Thursday, yes.
Law says that you cannot change any regulations on campaigns, on elections.
1 year to an election.
1 year to an election. That means that yesterday was the last day. So that bill that was brought to Parliament on Thursday.
And of course, Parliament does not sit on Friday.
Yes, but that
sit
argument,
on Saturday, Sunday.
That argument,
the time has lapsed as of yesterday.
No, that argument is you can't get a weaker argument than that one.
Which one?
But it's the law.
It has lapsed. It hasn't.
It has lapsed.
You see,
yesterday was the 9th of August.
No.
It is pegged to a particular day.
Let me just ask the question. But I'm only raised it. So, when you say the bill has to come to Parliament, does it mean that every time this happens, you have to bring in a new bill and say this one? Or does the bill that was brought previously suffice?
But didn't he say this, that it lapses? The same thing happened in 2016. It was brought before, it was not tabled. It was tabled, it was not discussed. Right? And it was not made law. Same thing happened.
Let me just
it
clarify.
Still sits in the House, doesn't it?
The bill was brought in 2016. And technically, it could not be applied to the election as a result of the timeline. But it was nevertheless in Parliament.
So they could still have discussed it.
They could have discussed it. They could have amended it. They could have done anything because the bill was already in Parliament. However, further, IBC brought amendments. Why are you bringing amendments to Parliament? Because there's something
in Parliament.
Isn't it? So you bring amendments to improve on it because of whatever consultations and the conversations we've had over the year. And therefore, we have a situation where They have presented amendments, which means there's something active in Parliament which should be discussed. So there were about some, I don't know, but I heard it from a number of media stations which are talking about the Speaker of the Assembly saying IBC is the one which was late. IBC was not late. It was in Parliament. They have conspired this over the years. And remember, I said also, the Campaign Financing Act, we had our elections on March 4th, 2013. The act itself was passed after, when it had been brought together with the other election laws in 2011. You can see as a systematic, postponement or deferment of this issue.
Basically, our politicians don't want to have these regulations on campaign financing.
No, they don't.
And the reason is because we don't want, or politicians don't want, in terms of accountability, questions asked as to where the funds are coming from for elections. Just a couple of weeks ago, we talked about, elections, the entire political space taking up 35 million shillings for a senator, for example. So are we looking at a situation where nobody actually wants to be accountable for or answer questions relating to where they get the financing for this? Because 35 million shillings is a lot of money.
Yeah.
When you look at it vis-a-vis what's happening in the country economically at the moment, or even 5 years ago, it is a lot of money for one position. And we know that there are several people vying for that same position. So people who are shirking responsibility, people who don't want to stand when it comes to accountability of elections, beyond the dates, Musau, can we then truly say that we have credible elections? Because we can look at the dates. May 9th, boom, this is done. May 10th, August 11th, we're playing within, good spaces. But for me, credibility goes beyond just marking the dates, but the stuff and the content of what is actually happening during these elections. With all of these things that we're hearing, passing a date, not it being tabled, not discussing, getting under the door, are we going to have credible elections? Have we been having them?
On the basis of that, and I think Latif asked a very good question, whether somebody can be able to go to court over some issues about whether elections have been fair. This is a major area of unfairness. And there is every reason that somebody can be able to protest that the election was not fair. You already see from election experts like Kofi Annan and others, they're already stating that this is a critical issue. If you're going to have integrity in your elections, control political finance. He who pays the piper calls the tune. So if you're going to be having people from all over, and we have seen this money, the reality of our electioneering is that we do get money from wrong sources. We have politicians who are backed up by foreign governments. We have politicians who are backed up by
foreign institutions.
Yes, foreign institutions, drug money. It's apparent. It's street speak. Everybody talks about it. Where did this person get the money from? And nobody is questioning these sources. And these people end up being your leaders. How do you drive a country? You say, but the participation of the people requires that people can be able to choose freely who their representatives are. When you bring in money, there is an aspect of freeness that is bought away.
Isn't it worse that you then can't ask questions about it? Because in this case, then this is where it gets really tricky with the law. Because you can't ask questions about it because there's no framework upon which you can.
Well, questions you can ask, but what are you going to do after you've asked the question?
No, I mean, in terms of now pursuing accountability, and nothing can actually be done to say, show us the source, and if the source is not credible, then we can do something about this. You can't. The framework doesn't exist.
And that's the futility of what he's saying, that you can ask the questions. You can ask the questions. You'll ask questions anytime. I mean, Kenyans have asked these questions about the credibility of some of these leaders.
So what?
But then the question becomes, now let's go to the technical aspect of it, a court. And I had an opportunity to have a discussion with Justice David Majanja, who also sits in the Judicial Committee on Elections. And he said, you see what? We are going to be controlled by technical aspects. Yep. This is a political process. Judges and the law does not deal with politics. It deals with technical clear matters. So that you bring an accusation that this person has gotten money from an illegal source, then I have now to sit and look at the definitive framework.
What defines illegal?
Yes. So
in this context,
if I don't have it, then I cannot be able to to adjudicate over the issue.
But
Or
then
even
can
give you a
someone then
favourable-
sue Parliament for not passing this law? Because
That's right.
there's an
That's-
expectation that Parliament shall pass legislation and regulations governing campaign financing.
Should they fail to do that?
Actually, it is much more inferred by the Constitution itself, because the Constitution does speak about the need to regulate campaign finance under Article 88, through which IBC gets its powers. So by that direction, and that's usually where we say, for those of us who don't want to think too much into the processes, we don't want to think too much. We're just saying, can IBC regulate? Because it is clear
they've been given the mandate,
by the Constitution. That's a overriding authority in the country. So now, how they do it, if they have to go through legislation, through Parliament, or use any other means, whatever administrative structures they may be having, we expect them to do it.
Can they directly gazette and say these are the regulations?
No, they cannot
Or
be
must all regulations must go through
the law must
Parliament.
go through Parliament. What they can do is that they can have an administrative policy that tries to address some of those issues. But then again, it will still be challenged to some level in terms of its authority.
Yeah. So 1 year to the next general election, as we had a conversation the other day with Tom Boy, a governance consultant, from a study that they had conducted together with Professor Karuti Kanyinga, cost of politics in Kenya, implications for participation and development. That study just had indicated that it costs on average 35.5 million shillings for someone to campaign as a senator, 22.8 million shillings as a woman rep, MP 18.2 million shillings, MCA 3 million shillings. We have not talked about governor or president, and president in the last elections have been in the tunes of billions of shillings just for you to campaign as a presidential candidate. What are all these sources of money? Anyway, the conversation we are having today is the preparation for next year's general election. Legal, practical, political, psychological, emotional. Are we all ready to have the next general election? And we want to open up the phone lines after this quick break. 0719-012-600, or you can text us on SMS 40127, or participate on social media. SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. 25 after 8. Time for us to take a break on SpiceFM, online, and on KTN Home. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
School season is upon us, and parents know what that means. Traffic. And the headache of getting your kids to school on time. Not to worry, Maramoja is here to take the pressure off your shoulders. Join me, Monique, on the Spice Drive from 3 p.m. every weekday to learn more about Maramoja's school transport solution and the benefits it has for parents and school administrators alike.
24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
At NCBA, we know it's more than investments. It's growing your returns to secure your future. Call 0711 056 444 or visit ncbagroup.com for more information on our investment banking options. At NCBA Bank, the numbers that matter to you matter to us.
24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
The name is NCBA, and the numbers that matter to you matter to us. Get NCBA SME business solutions tailored to your business and start counting the special memories. NCBA Bank. Go.
Okay, the sun speaking through those
NCBA
previously cloudy conditions in Nairobi at 15, highs of 24 today. 22 will be the high in Nyeri, where it's cloudy at 14. 16 degrees and cloudy in Nakuru, highs of 23 and lows of 14. 12 will be the low in Eldoret, where it's currently mostly cloudy at 15. Light rain in Kisumu at 21, highs of 26 and lows of 18. It's also raining in Kakamega at 21. We'll see highs of 25 and lows of 14. We'll see a low of 22 in Mombasa, where it continues to rain at 23. It's also raining in Malindi at 25. It'll go to highs of 28 and lows of 24. Partly sunny conditions through Kampala at 20, highs of 25 and lows of 17. Partly sunny conditions at 23 in Dar es Salaam, with highs of 29 and lows of 21. 5 will be the low in a sunny Johannesburg, currently at 15, highs of 23. Light rain in Lagos continues at 25 with highs of 29 and lows of 24. And we're looking at sunny conditions in Kinshasa at 19. We'll see highs of 31 back down to lows of 19.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. SpiceFM.
Spice up your life.
Okay, so we're still seeing some on Jogo Road getting into the CBD. Landys Road is not looking too bad as you're trying to get into the city as well. Industrial areas still have some red spots here and there. On Lunga Lunga specifically, Enterprise Road also through to industrial area and out into the city is looking slow. Langata Road still continues with that headache, thumping with traffic all the way through to the T-Mall roundabout. Aerodrome Road is also not looking too bad as an option, but you do have some traffic that comes then down from Bagathi Way out right at the Bunyala Road roundabout. That is an issue. Okay, Uhuru Highway from Nyayo Stadium out into the city, past through Westlands is slow. Remember, there's that diversion between the Kenyatta Avenue roundabout and University Way roundabout, so watch out for that. Okay, so we're still seeing some traffic right around Muthui coming off of Survey. That's built up as the minutes tick by. Pangani looks like an issue right now. And also at Kiambu Road, joining with Muthui Square. Quite hot and heavy. Let's keep an eye on things. We're in the middle of traffic hour. We'll get out of it soon enough, but there's still some. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.
Sanguni, hamujambo. It's 9:30. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. 0719-012-600. Do you think we are prepared to have credible elections next year? That's the conversation we're having today. 365 days to the next general election. The next 9th of August will be a Tuesday, will be a public holiday, will be the general election date as per the Constitution, barring any other arguments that we are seeing. Moves to try and delay the election, somebody going to court to argue that that's not the right day to have an election. But if we just go with what we think is the direct translation of our Constitution, 9th of August 2022, general election. Are we ready to have that election? Just before we pick the calls, let me just remind you some of the key dates that our guest this morning, Mule Musau, who is an expert in election observation, National Coordinator at Election Observation Group, has given us. So first, main date, 9th August 2022. Now, if we start working backwards, by the end of the day of the 9th of December this year, every person who wants to contest an election, according to the law, should have concluded with their campaign financing. And then the 9th of February, all public servants should be resigning from their office. 14th of March, the IEBC then goes to officially gazette the date of the election and what is required of that election to take place. Between the 16th and the 22nd of April, parties to conduct their nominations. On the 9th of May, IEBC looks at how to take independent candidates. That's when they should quit their political parties, if they're in political party, and they go in. 31st day of May, the official nomination of the candidates begins, and that is when all the candidates then now present their papers to the IEBC for proper acknowledgement as candidates, and that concludes on the 7th of June when the IEBC formally concludes and confirms these are the candidates for all the 1,800 and what? Elections across the country, MCA to president. 9th of May as well is the date that the IEBC closes the voter registration. Then we begin the entire voter verification exercise of that voter register, which concludes on the 9th of June. And then the 7th of July, IEBC tells us we have the certified copy of voters for the next general election. All those dates building up to having an election. So let's go to the phone lines. Are we ready for this? Presidential candidate Ruban Kigami, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
Good Very morning. Well, thanks.
Very interesting discussions here.
Yes. Are we ready, Ruben?
I would like to first of all, thank our guests for opening up Pandora's box.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to bring an angle that maybe the average Kenyan does not quite have when it comes to making a change in this country. The biggest obstacle anyone who wants to make real change will face is how you deal with the mindset of the general public regarding finances.
Mm.
I think I'll give my personal experience, and that is that it is very difficult for anyone to convince the public that if you are running, you do not have all the big money.
Mm.
And it goes up with the position you're running for. So, of course, the first obstacle I have met as a presidential candidate is being weighed against all the other aspirants.
Mm.
Most of them in government, most of them with, a huge record of spending, and the optics already indicate that if you're running for presidency, you have your billions in place.
Mm.
So Ruban Kigami steps out and says, I'm running for office of the president, and they already baptize you with a big name, Mheshimiwa, and as soon as that comes onto the table, they expect that every meeting you have to give something at the end of the meeting.
Uh-huh.
Whenever you call, a group to meet with you to discuss your agenda, they're asking what do you have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's even more poisonous when you look at IEBC's own indication that if you're going to run for, let's say, the presidential office, you shouldn't spend more than 5 billion.
Mm.
So already IEBC puts on the table the expectation in the minds of the public that
you have money.
if you're spending on the presidential campaign, you need to be spending billions.
Mm.
And you cannot take that away from Mwananchi because IEBC accepts that you should spend billions.
If you're going to change the narrative, Ruben, is it possible from what you've done so far and what you've seen, is it possible then to run a credible campaign without this initial money that IEBC, for example, is suggesting? Do you think it can be done? Less than 5 billion shillings?
Because, that's why I'm sharing my own experience. That in 2013, I spent less than $500,000 to run my gubernatorial campaign and came fourth out of 6. So it is doable. The issue is whether you can compete with your candidate, the challenges that come the last night before elections and go house to house and door to door and dish, 500 shillings notes or 1,000 shilling notes, depending on, the level of education of the person or the status in society. Those who are considered low in society can get away with something like 100 bob or 50 bob. So competing against these big guns and coming forth, of course, takes will, but it takes you to stand against so many odds. I'll give you an example of my presidential campaign up to this point. And I am very open because I come as somebody who wants to insist on values, changing our value system in this country, the way we do things, that we need things clean. So I'm able to name, for example, that up to this time, since I stepped out in April, I have not spent more than 200,000 shillings. But it's doable. I have, made my declaration. I've had my meetings, and it's all a matter of my friends contributing and so on. It is doable.
But then, Ruben, you see, when it comes to campaign financing, we have to count even those contributions, those donations. If you've been facilitated to travel, isn't that so, Mule? If you've been facilitated to travel from Eldoret to Nairobi and you've taken a flight.
I'm just saying that the difference is, are we open enough to show where the sources came from?
I don't think we are. If we are starting by you saying that you've only spent less than 200,000 shillings since April, then we have an issue already. Because I'm raising questions about that. 200,000 shillings since April?
Yes, and the whole thing is that I can show I spent, 50,000 on this, I spent 50, and it's all meetings. It's all meetings. You pay for the venue, you pay for the flight, and I can show the tickets. I can show all this. The issue is that my competitors will come with these big monies, but they cannot show, or they're not open to that kind of scrutiny.
What you say is actually true, Ruben. But I would like to perhaps bring in a different perspective. And my perspective is this. If you know you want to campaign on a platform that is different from those already campaigning, knowing they have money, then your discussion money shouldn't even feature. Because let me explain why. Administratively, it is understandable you will require money. And if people are contributing, then it should be specific, as in, you have people who need to be paid. Somebody contributes to pay for these people. You record it. You need office space. Somebody contributes to paying whatever you require for that space, and so forth and so forth. Now, the moment you mention money, it doesn't matter how you put it, but you've mentioned even 200,000. That amount is an enormous amount for any Kenyan. Even the ones who talk about billions. Believe me. And then they are not the majority of those who are voting. Now, the majority of those who are voting, the moment you go to 1,000 shillings, and this you know well, Ruben, you are talking about a great deal of money. Then you mention 200,000 shillings. You're talking about something they can never even imagine, they can never see. So already you may not know so, but you have put yourself in the same category as those with the billions. And they will be expecting more from you.
The difference is this. That I am able to I'm able to come public on SpiceFM and say, I have received this much for air tickets, I have received this much for my venues, I've received this much, and it totals to this. Now, the point is that my competitors cannot do that. Now, I needed to bring out a point that is so critical, and that is when it comes to accountability, the losing of our elections to goons and bad governance begins at this stage, where you receive money, for example, from someone, and then you begin to make promises that if you give me this money, then I'm going to give you a position. Or if you give me this particular money, you're going to be my running mate, or you're going to be minister for this and the other. So you already begin to form government on the basis of tenderpreneurship and promises that will then not make you deliver on the basis of either meritocracy or equity. And so you cannot form a government when your campaign methods themselves are rigged already.
Yeah. Good point.
And so we have to then call upon IEBC to do a little better on its scorecard in terms of qualification and even in terms of finance management, so that by the time you are presenting your papers, for example, I think we should then be able to also present our bank records and show how the monies have been spent, even for that qualification. Because a lot of rogue monies are coming in and nobody wants to explain, nobody wants to be accountable. Once you are in office, I think an audit lifestyle and, the declaration of your wealth and so on is the only thing that is going to help us ask the questions. Your salary is, say, 1 million or 1.5 million for argument's sake. but you have spent billions upon billions. How do you account for this kind of wealth right from the campaign period?
Ruben, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you, guys.
Have a lovely day. Campaign financing is still big, yes.
Yeah, I want to just a quick rejoinder to what Ruben has talked about. There are two issues that are very interesting. One is that, we appreciate his disclosure in terms of this is how much money we are talking about. But as Citi said, again, if you look at money from the public eye point of view, the public is looking for 50 shillings.
Right.
They're looking for 100 shillings from the politicians. So when Ruben talks about 200,000 shillings, they think he can afford it. They believe he can afford it because he's talking about money. But the other part of it is that he is operating outside the campaign period. The regulations, if they were in place, they would regulate money during an official campaign period, which begins once the party's nominations are received and the candidates are received by IBC. Then they have a window of about 30 days before the elections, which I think ends 48 hours before the elections. So that is the time that we start counting.
Only July next year.
Only July next year we're supposed to be counting the money that they're supposed to use. Now, when you talk about this cumulative amount of money that people use over a 5-year span, so we start talking about billions and the billions. Because the window of period that we are now starting to regulate the money is when you are told, go out there and campaign.
Yeah.
Does it make sense though? So
it does, because we should. The assumption right now is that if Latif wants to run, so if Latif wants to run for an election, the assumption is that he's going to use a particular vehicle, if it's a political party or he's going to be an independent candidate. We've read the dates in which those things happen. So our expectation is that you'll announce yourself officially when you've been presented as a candidate, and therefore now you start campaigning. But you see, I talked about the campaign, the permanent campaign mode that we have in our country. So this brings an extra need for money, which should not be necessary, but somehow happens because we have created a culture around it that we have to start campaigning. I'm very sure, of course, it makes sense that Ruben will be out there campaigning if all the other presidential candidates are already campaigning. Well, it does make sense that you want to also go there, because otherwise you're giving them a head start. But they are all in the wrong still. If you are to use the law and the practice, then we don't need to know any candidates right now. We expect our members of parliament are dutifully working for their people. It should be expected that any presidential candidate, if the president is running, for instance, for an election, that he's working until he's declared to run.
It then appears to me that there's so much that's happening that ought not to be happening at the moment, but in terms of regulation and checks on this, is not happening either. So for me, when we talk about a credible election, for example, we tend to look at it on the day. But I tend to look at it as a process, which I think we should. The entire process. Is it credible from the beginning? You talk about the law being extremely technical, or rather that is what adjudicators of the law will look at, the technicalities of this. But then why don't we ever pinpoint on these things? If we're talking about right now, nobody should be declaring that they're a candidate for the election, for example. Nobody should be politicking on that. Why don't we see, even if the checks are there, why don't we see evidence of it?
And to add on to that, when you're talking of evidence, the amendments that were made, how impactful really are they? What is it that they fundamentally changed?
Which amendments?
I remember we had the bill. IBC then came in and said, folks,
proposed amendments.
We would like to... those amendments, that's what I'm talking about. How far did those go? And if they were to go in, how impactful are they?
Well, we can't talk about even their impact because they're not even operational anyway. They have not been discussed in Parliament, to the best of my knowledge. So the big problem, and just answering with what Andu is asking in terms of the process issue, we have, you see, we don't expect, everything has its time. There's an appointed time for everything. When politicians go out there and say in public that I want to run, I'm going to be the next president for this country, outside the campaign period, that basically is just a stray utterance out there from election speak, because we have to see a candidate. We know there are very many people, for instance, who will campaign to become a presidential candidate. Even some of the luminaries that we have right now will not be on that ballot paper. So they can declare. The declarations everybody has the freedom of expression to declare at any time. But if you want it to start being considered as an election activity, then it has to be within the parameters and the calendar of that activity. You can't be out of it, and then we say for instance, we have presidential candidates. Once you declare a presidential candidate, among the things that you can even be given is security, for instance.
Yeah.
So you can't start asking the state apparatus to start giving Ruban Kigami security as he walks around the country
Today.
because he's outside the framework of the campaigns. It is when he's declared, we know we have 8 candidates, we even start working now the logistics around protecting them, around regulating and watching what they are doing, because now they become persons of interest officially. But anybody can declare. Mule Musau can say, I want to become the president.
You can just say it, I'm a candidate.
Yes, but we cannot start all working towards that because you have said it. It needs to process it through the existing framework so that it can become an official candidate, and then we start dealing with that candidacy.
Tony is asking on social media, how far have we gone in addressing some of the issues that were raised by the Supreme Court in nullifying the last general election? Raising issues of confidence in the transmission of the results, opening the servers, transparency.
As I answer that, let me also pick a point that City had started off with, when you talked about the reforms. I think you were talking much more in regard of the campaign finance reforms, but not the general reforms. But if I was to speak with that in the general reforms, we are late now again in terms of general legal reforms. Remember, the BBI was packaged as an omnibus with very many amendments which were going to affect our election practice. That is still in court. And we had all these, IBC had their own suggestions, the Office of the Registrar Political Party had their reform agenda, the civil society had formed their own packages, recommendations in terms of what is going to be changed. We all nearly stayed back. Everybody nearly stayed back because they said, oh, we have this BBI thing which is going on. It is headed towards a referendum, and then it packaged a lot of the legal changes, part of which should be able to address the issues around transmission and election technology, basically. But that is still out there. And now we are seeing efforts to unpack the BBI. If you watch very carefully, Parliament has been picking an issue which is inside the BBI and now starting to debate it separately, because there are chances that the BBI may not go the full extent. Because we are waiting for the Court of Appeal to make a determination on the 20th. So we have so many changes that we want to see in our laws and in our practice, but are yet to be put in place. Justice Johan Kriegler advised that if you want to make any legal framework changes, it needs to be 2 years before an election. Now we are in the final year from today, and we are still discussing. We now are saying, well, the financing laws have been given a knockout. We have changes in terms of the practice of transmission, the management of resources in elections. We still have these proposals in Parliament. We have not discussed them yet. We were going to go to a referendum without even a legal framework for a referendum. You see, there are too many things that we are again waiting for the sunset of the election period or electoral cycle to start pushing quick amendments. And that is usually a very dangerous thing to do. It gives the powers that be an opportunity to change things which cannot be scrutinized in the last minute.
I think what I see in all these conversations about preparations for an election, how we conduct elections, how we challenge the results of an election, it just points down to one thing. We focus so much on, when we're arguing, we focus on the technicalities. The technical, the law says, the law is very clear. Justice Kriegler's report, the Supreme Court advisory. And then the bigger challenge that we have is in our own values. as a people.
The norms.
Because there's a lot of dishonesty in this entire field. That dishonesty of bringing a law just a day to the end of the calendar year, the calendar
knowing
period.
Full well
knowing
the intention
full well
was
the
never to
implication.
discuss it. Yeah.
The whole issue of not wanting to give IEBC the independence that it should have, everything else just points towards our own, and not just the political class, but we as a people are politically dishonest.
I have always, I have a very simple phrase for it. It's bad manners. It's not even dishonesty. Dishonesty looks a little colorful. It is bad manners.
Tabia mbaya.
Tabia mbaya. We everywhere. Voter bribery, which is the largest, in my view, based on the observations I've conducted over the last 10 years, voter bribery is among the biggest frauds in an election. Yet nearly everybody in this country partakes in it. You go to the villages. I go to the village during election time. People are not in their farms. People are waiting for politicians in their shopping centers because there's some 50 shillings which is going to be spread out. Isn't that partaking in a crime, in a fraudulent activity? And everybody is okay with this. Or at least majority of the people are okay with this. The politicians, and you've heard the politicians argue this very many times. We are your own sons and daughters. We know you represent you. Yeah, we're representing you. When you go to parliament, they go and start having that other interest, as the city was calling it. Their own particular special interest comes into focus. So we have a situation in the country where people are not operating using the norms and values that are required of undertaking of a credible election process. And it happens from the voter all the way to the politician and to the manager of elections. So it's across board. And it is these norms. So when Kofi Annan says institutions, norms, and practices as being essential for credible election, that's part of it. You can't have a credible election in a country where everybody seems
norms can't be the thing that only institutions practice when everybody else is not practicing. That will not be norm.
That's exactly.
So you can't have them. Then I think about the greater population. Then you can't demand it either. If you're involved in a practice that is seen untoward, you cannot demand for a credible one.
Exactly.
If you're part of this entire mess,
you can.
Well, you can, but you
You
shouldn't.
can when
you
you
ought not
consider
to.
that part of the norms that we have is hypocrisy. It's a national position. We tend to be hypocritical.
We point a finger.
Yeah.
Look at the politician.
What? Yes. So
you ought not to demand for something the opposite of that which you are practicing at that point.
There are rights and responsibilities for every citizen. You have your rights, yes, but you also have your responsibilities. And part of the responsibility is to ensure that you also act right.
Right.
So how do we get there? How do we arrive at that
Eric,
ideal?
You're asking a valid question, but I'm thinking, how do we move from a position where leadership positions, whether it's political or otherwise, is actually believed that you solve problems by talking either at it or talking about it? And when you've made your statements, as far as you're concerned, it's done. We will, and then a litany of things that you will do. End of story. And then nothing gets done after that. It comes up again, another litany of things that ought to be done. And then again, you're back to factory settings. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. How do we move from this?
There are two places you can be able to move. There are two movers. The first mover, of course, is the citizen, through citizen agency. Ndu is described as a believer of citizen agency. In your sign-in, that's
people
what we hear.
Power.
Yes, people power. So I think that's a position, and that's why I think in the last engagement I had with you, I was talking about political education and the need for people to understand that they can move things, that they can be able to move things from the village chief to the MCA and all the way up to the presidency. That's the first, and there are a lot of emphasis and a lot of efforts need to be done. We have civic education, which is basically talks about this needs to be done, this needs to be done, these are the do's, these are their rights, these are their responsibilities, but all about the power to act, to petition, to go to court. What somebody like, for instance, Okia Mtata does in this country is citizen agency. It's somebody picking up an issue and saying, I'm going to court, and I'm going to the police, and I'm going to ensure this justice is served as far as this issue is concerned. So you want more of those things emerging from the people so that there's a groundswell. But there's also the supply side where the leadership is.
Yeah.
And what is leadership? Well, how do you describe leaders? I mean, the simple descriptions is this influencer, this person who has the ability to be able to convince and to lead people in a certain direction. So what exactly, when you become a leader, when you say you are the member of county assembly for a particular respective area, how do you move your people towards a certain direction?
Yeah.
So those two angles is where we start off. The problem is that both of them are premised on this bad manners.
The foundation is wrong.
That now getting yourself to move, but there are good things which have been happening. I think we don't speak a lot about the fact that if you incrementally from independence, our elections have gotten better, by the way, statistically, and based on data that we have. We had times where we had, although there have been very clear examples of wanting to go back again down that way, but we have had, remember we used to steal elections at the ballot, and now we are looking at it in terms of we have
electronic
and all that. But there are some improvements, but we still have to move the people, we have to move the leaders.
Mule Musau, thank you very much for joining us today. And we want to thank our audience as well on KTN Home who've been with us since the top of the hour. Welcome back. The conversations continue on SpiceFM into the next hour. 94.4 Nairobi, Mombasa is 87.9, Kisumu 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, Eldoret 96.7, Nyeri is 90.9 and Malindi is 97.7. In the next hour, we do a bit of catching up on what needs to happen in the election and also what has happened in Tokyo, Japan. Good morning, it's now 9 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. Government spokesperson Cyrus Aguna has urged matatu operators and passengers to remember the COVID-19 pandemic is still with us, even as PSVs resume carrying full capacity. He says it's important to always mask up, observe hand hygiene, and open the windows to allow fresh air to circulate. This is even as a number of Kenyans have expressed mixed reactions over the move. The government reviewed the 60% passenger capacity on Friday last week, urging operators to observe COVID-19 protocols or risk losing their licenses. Here are some of the views of some passengers.
Naonelea si vyema kwa sababu idadi inaendelea kuongezeka ya corona. So mimi kama mwananchi nitaumia. Naona imesaidia. Ile wakati walikuwa nabeba less capacity walikuwa natuumiza sana. Lakini naona watatujali.
Kama kuna yule atakubali kukaa na mwingine akubali na kulipa hiyo pesa 700. Lakini una uwezo wa kulipa 1000 na utaki kutangamana na watu, kuna gari nyingine kando.
Nauri hakuna vile itakuwa chini sababu na maana diesel iko juu.
Somalia has insisted that the border dispute with Kenya be resolved by the International Court of Justice. Somali Prime Minister Mohamed Roble says he'll await the court's decision on the border in the Indian Ocean, which several months ago threatened and disrupted relations between the two neighboring nations. Roble's statement came just hours after foreign CS Rachel Omamo met with representatives of the Somali government in Mogadishu to discuss a number of issues, including improving good neighborliness. Kenya has, however, been pushing for an out-of-order dispute resolution process. The two brothers who allegedly died at the hands of police will be buried on Friday at their home in Kihangari, Embu County. Family spokesperson Felix Ndega says burial preparations are already underway. The death of the two sparked protests that led to the death of one person as police engaged rioters in Embu County. Deputy Inspector General Edwin Bugwa, who visited the family last week, also ordered for the transfer of Embu North Sub-County Police Commander Emily Ngariaya and Manyata Police Station or CS. This comes as the family continues to demand for justice, even after post-mortem results showed they died from multiple and head injuries.
From the postmortem report, the Benson one is consistent to what the police said. He might have jumped from the vehicle because broken ribs, and then there's those bruises in his body. But now with the second one, there is not any bruise, there's not any broken rib. He only has head injuries in his body.
The next general election is exactly 1 year away today. On this day next year, the theme will be Kenya Decides. President Uhuru Kenyatta will complete packing up his bags, ready to hand over State House to Kenya's fifth president. Eyes will be on Deputy President William Ruto, ODM leaders Raila Odinga, Wiper's Kalonzo Musyoka, NC's Musalia Mudavadi, as well as KANU's Gideon Moi, among other presidential aspirants. That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
Traffic on Vibes Radio. Traffic on Vibes Radio.
Thank you so much, Leo. Back at 2 minutes past 9. Forgiveness is always conditional. Even before God, there's nothing like unconditional forgiveness.
Government doesn't pay you pension until you retire. In fact, they have no money for you. The day you retire, they look for it.
This country is punishing many young people. These young people are more susceptible to be deceived, to be taken advantage of, and they're more susceptible to be bought off.
Let us also talk about where we want our country to go. You know, we are a population of very young people.
We're in a state of capture. The judiciary is under duress. Parliament is in the pocket of the executive. You don't sit and wait for the regime to topple itself. It will never do so.
By the way, let me tell you, these guys are so persuasive. I'm telling you, they can persuade you to sell your grandmother. I'm telling you, they can sell sand in the desert.
City, has anybody on this program said to you as a guest, saying, "Oh, shut up, we don't want to be told what to do"? Has you ever that kind of? Has anybody been
I will not listen.
A bit of advice, because you're working on the premise that we should all pay heed to these proverbs.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, red hot action on Jogoo Road this morning, getting to the city at some parts only. It's not too bad. Where it is still thumping is at that Kiambu Muthaiga Square junction. Quite a lot of traffic there today. Langata Road also quite hot and heavy as you get towards the CBD. We're seeing little pockets of traffic within the city centre right now, but nothing too crazy actually. I think it's a good day looking at what is going on. Not much in terms of in and out traffic. Other parts of the country are as well reporting that it's looking pretty good. Talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter if you need to. We're getting out of traffic in about half hour or so let's keep an eye on things. Text as well on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's Kenya's biggest conversation at 6 minutes after 9. We are on to the final hour of today's show. And we begin with the day's proverb, City.
If two wise men always agree, then there is no need for one.
If two wise men always agree,
then
there is no need for one.
Mm-hmm.
So these Wahengas who came up with proverbs, it's not all of them agreeing.
No, it wasn't. And that's why I think you have that variety of proverbs. Otherwise, it'd just be limited.
All right. Mm-hmm. That's very true. That's very true.
So the Wahenga community, one could argue, perhaps are a democratic community.
Mm.
Mm. Okay, you come with a proverb, okay, so it is yours. We agree it is yours. Not that we agree with it. We agree, since you belong to the Wahenga, your proverb is acceptable.
Mm. The rest, aye.
The rest, as you correctly put it, aya.
The headlines today, well, apart from the politics, have colorful photos of Kenya's athletes. The greatest of all time, that's a picture of Eliud Kipchoge celebrating after winning gold in the men's marathon at the Tokyo Olympics yesterday. The world record holder broke from the rest of the field after 30 kilometers, and they just never saw him again. I enjoyed the weather, but the conditions were really hard. Hard for everybody, but the race was really good, and I'm happy to be the winner. That's what Kipchoge said at the end of it. And then the nation has the photos of all our medalists from Japan. We had gold from Eliud Kipchoge, gold by women's 1,500 meters runner Faith Kipyegon, gold from men's 800 meters Emmanuel Korir, gold from women's marathon Paris Jepchirchir, and then we have silver, men's 800 meters Ferguson Rotich, men's 1,500 meters Timothy Cheruiyot, silver women's marathon Bridget Kosgei, silver women's 5,000 meters Helen Obiri, bronze women's 3,000 meters steeplechase Hyvin Kiyang, and bronze in the men's 3,000 meters steeplechase Benjamin Kigen. Now, if you look at that, you see, wow. You know, and like you said, we were top in Africa. The top country in Africa from the just concluded Olympics. Number 3 globally in athletics. Number 19 globally in total number of medals won. By the fact that we had those 4 gold medals, 4 silver and 2 bronze. We did very well. But as we were having all these conversations, as we were watching the athletics unfold through the time, we were asking ourselves, what's happening? Why, for example, are we losing in the 3,000 meter steeplechase that we haven't lost in so many years? Why, for example, are we getting to a point where our 1,500 meters, we appear to not be running with the tactic of a team? Why did we send a team to the Olympics in volleyball? And how did they perform? How did our boxers perform? How did our rugby perform? How did our sprinters perform? Because this one, long distance races, good. But we participate in many other fields, not just long distance. How many field events did we participate in? Were we there in long jump? Were we there in high jump? Were we there in triple jump? Were we there in pole vault? Were we there in discus? In shot put? In javelin? Yes, we were there. Why not all these other field events as well? We were in swimming. How did our swimming team perform? Were they just there, and was the focus not given to them? All these questions we have to ask. As we celebrate those that have brought in the medals, we have to ask ourselves about the preparation of all these things. And we've been having a conversation with Robin Toskin in Japan. He's been watching this. Robin is the sports editor for the Standard Group. He's been in Japan. Robin, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Lucky.
Very well. A very good morning from Nairobi. I don't know how the weather is like. We've been seeing, it's just been some hot weather in Japan throughout the period. Even moving to a new city so the marathon can take place in a different location, but still, even that location was pretty hot.
Yeah, it's really pretty tough here in Tokyo. I was actually in Sapporo for the marathon on Saturday and Sunday yesterday. And I can tell you the heat was really, punishing those athletes. I happened to have spoken to a few of them. Of course, the Kenyan athletes, the marathoners. I also spoke to Ugandan athletes. And they told me really that heat was really punishing. But of course, they agree that a marathon is the king of sport because it tests the endurance of a human being. And therefore, they had to do it for their different, flags. And I spoke with Kipchoge, and he really said that marathon actually tests your ability to endure, challenges. And so, it was really difficult for them. But then today, this is afternoon, I'm already in Tokyo, and it's 3 p.m. here, 12 minutes past 3. And the temperatures are kind of falling from what we witnessed in the last few weeks.
The athletes must have felt well. Very good. Those who won, they must have celebrated as they were winning, as the closing ceremony was taking place yesterday. Kenya's national anthem being played twice at the closing ceremony must have been a wonderful feeling.
Wonderful. I'm telling you, even as journalists, we are quite a number here from different media houses in back home there in Kenya. And to tell you, to be honest, we soaked up the plaudits because of the performance of our Kenyan athletes. And people are asking us, how do you people manage to do or they get it right when it comes to marathon? And about that, they congratulated us. How I wish that they were talking to those athletes directly, but they were because they couldn't access them. But they were telling us congratulations, and we soaked in the plaudits, and it was such a proud moment for us as hearing the national anthem belted out twice in succession inside the Tokyo Olympic Stadium. It is the kind of moment that we really want to live for. As when you become a sports journalist, you always want to spur growth of sport in your country so that you enjoy some of these moments. I wouldn't have had an opportunity, like this to come all the way to Tokyo, or it that our athletes were not, performing to the level that they come to such an international or global stage.
Right there, just right there, what you're saying. Look at what the performance of these athletes have done for the nation. You tell me, in the last 5 years, what is this thing that any Kenyan, any group of Kenyans has done that has made Kenya look as brightly as it did, not just during those last moments of the Olympics, but cumulatively? And then ask yourself, all that goodwill that is generated by our sports people, how much effort? I was going to use the word recognition, but I am equating recognition with effort and resources that is actually given to these sports, and how much recognition. And again, I'm talking about resources that we, the public, because if we hadn't won, what conversation, if we had come out with one bronze and yet we had participated, would we still have been feeling elated that we at least participated?
It is a question that I even put to the administrative secretary in the Ministry of Sports, Zach Kinuthia. I happen to have shared a taxi with him from the airport to the hotel after the marathon. I really honestly asked him, well, you've done well as a ministry or as a government this time round to facilitate the participation, to ensure that the logistics were okay, right from Nairobi to Japan. But then is a question that you need to ask yourself then, that what have you done for these athletes? And I pointed out the issue of Kipchoge Keino Stadium in Eldoret, which has gobbled up millions and millions of shillings. Yet the tartan is not complete. The perimeter fence, there's nothing, for us to be proud as Kenyans that we've done something for these athletes. And as we are speaking, there's one athlete that could have made it to Tokyo for the steeplechase, a female athlete by the name Selfin Chespol. She was knocked down by a speeding vehicle as she was training in Gong. So she sustained injuries to the head. She couldn't go for the trials. Now, that was a big debate because we said if these athletes had a chance, a place where they can train, they wouldn't be exposing themselves to such dangers that we see on our roads. So as a country, and this goes to the government, that we really need to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, have we done enough for these athletes so that they can compete with the rest of the world? We've seen them, they've come here with rudimentary skills, I would say, because it is out of their own sacrifice that are able to get to this level.
Sure,
but in terms of investment as a country, we've not invested.
But very little, unfortunately, because I look at some of these athletes, Kipchoge himself. I look at some of these other, some of those who were able to perform very well, even those who may have missed out, by meters. But the investment that they make on a personal level far outweighs that which they get from country support. Now, if you look on the flip side, other athletes who are performing very well. I look at people like the Netherlands, Hassan. I'm going to go to her again. I mean, a treble in what she was able to do. 5,000, 10,000, and then win a bronze in the 1,500. But you can see very clearly that the government support far outweighs what she is putting in on an individual level. And you can see the difference. Does this not provide an opportunity for government and those in these positions to review the support and management of sports in the country?
It is a fantastic opportunity. This Tokyo Olympics should now provide us with that the platform to begin a conversation and look at what is it that we need to do as a country. And I put also that to the Administrative Secretary Kinovia, and he said that those are some of the things he will be taking back to Nairobi, so that we can have a national conversation that we really need to help these athletes realize their potential. Because yesterday Lawrence Cherono was beaten to the medal, the silver, collection, and bronze. By those two Somali athletes, they are athletes of Somali origin. One running for Belgium, the other one running for the Netherlands. And you could see the pain in the eyes of the face of Lawrence Cherono. Actually, we tried really to encourage him, and we told him really he did his best. And you get the feeling that these athletes are sweating it for the country. They're sweating it for the flag. Can't we get ourselves together and just push them over the line? I think it's very important that we are even having this conversation today. And whoever is listening across the country, I think this is the time.
The Ministry of Sports officials have been there with you in Japan from the beginning to the end. And was that the CS Hamida Mohammed who was at the finish line when Kipchoge was finishing?
No, that was the ambassador of Kenya to Japan.
Kenya's ambassador to Japan.
Ambassador Irina Tabu.
All right.
She was there. Waziri is back in Kenya because she lost her husband.
Yes.
She's mourning. I think according to their traditions, culture, the religious culture, I think she will not be available for the next, 40 days.
Yes.
So we just wish her well. But then one positive that I've taken from Madame Waziri is that she's willing to engage. She's willing to engage the professionals. And if you look at even the sports ministry, I could identify a few people who have been tapped from the private sector, and they are advising her accordingly. And there are a few changes. In terms of the logistics, it's far different from what we saw in 2016. So I just want to believe that a basis has been set for them now to build on this. But then the challenge is to go back there, bend backwards, and support the federations so that they can develop athletes who can compete effectively with those from the rest of the world.
I'm being cautiously optimistic. Yes, there's work that's happening in the ministry. And yes, there's been a better organization this time. Probably it's because you just want to avoid the scandal that came out of Rio 5 years ago. But is there real movement taking place in terms of, like what you said, supporting the federations, seeing that we can have a better prepared basketball team, better prepared volleyball team, better prepared people in other track and field events? Are we seeing that movement at the Ministry of Sports, or is it just focused on whoever qualifies to go to the Olympics? We are going to make sure that you have your plane ticket on time. We are going to make sure that you have your visa sorted, and you shall get your kit on time and the rest. But before that, to get you to qualify for the Olympics, is there movement?
There was a lady by the name Rose Washuka. She was the advisor to the minister. But I'm reliably told that she has left the ministry to go to the judiciary. I think his office. She came up with robust, policies that they have put on the ground, which I just hope that whoever will come in should be able to take it to another level. We have the general elections coming up next year. We don't know if there'll be a change, especially in the ministry, but of course they will be. We just hope that those policies that have been put in place will bear fruit. The hashtag they had, the Team Kenya had a hashtag that went like, you are the reason. The idea was they want to put the athlete at the center of everything. I want to believe therefore that what they mean by that is that they can go beyond just facilitating those athletes to participate at the international level, but also develop them back in the grassroots.
Sure.
So there could be movement, but then, as you know, those positions are political, appointments, and we don't know what will happen the next. But I want to trust that Waziri Ambassador Amina has put policies that will not just be shoved aside once another person comes into that office.
Right. And Toscan also, even as this is happening, optimistically, that Kenya is essentially getting its sports management house in order, other countries are not sleeping. Those who may have previously thought that you cannot beat Kenya have realized that you can, and are working, round the clock to perform better. And we can see the results of that. They are doing it. People are beating Kenyan athletes at races that they never would be able to before. So they're working much harder. Where do you think Kenya needs to work harder here also to either retain or surpass the position that they previously held?
They just need to learn from the best, especially in terms of management, because in management, you can always have the room to go back and find the basics in training for all the sport, the individual sport. And yesterday, Saturday, when I spoke to the bronze medalist in marathon from the US, young lady by the name Molly Seidel, she said that she really tried to keep up with the Kenyans, that is Paris Jepchirchir and Bridget Kosgei. And she said that she knows that Kenyans are the best at that level, and that if I just hung around them, I would get something. And true, she won bronze. So what she was basically saying is that they are looking up to Kenya to learn on how they are winning these medals. But unfortunately, we know that we are not doing the best or what should be done for us to excel at the top level. So the point is, people are looking up to us. They are picking the good things we are doing, and then now supplementing science with it, supplementing it with proper management and proper motivation, ensuring that there are facilities. And that is where now they are aging us. Those small margins, that's where they're aging us from.
It's actually interesting that you should say so, because I'm thinking of that, the Norwegian gentleman, Jacob Ingebrigtsen.
Yes.
This gentleman, we were discussing it earlier on with my colleagues, and his history was clear, and we ourselves, our own commentators and sports people like yourself, knew and pointed out and said, this is somebody to watch. Okay? Yeah. Now, the tragedy is, here we have people who don't have the history we have coming up and making new history. Now, we seem to be falling into this trap of, we have history, but now we are letting that history become decadent. And it's not just in athletics, because a lot of our focus seems to be in athletics as opposed to sports. Because we should be looking at the resource we have in athletics. Yes, it is a marvelous resource. It's a unique resource. It's a world-class resource, but sports in general. Because if the ability exists in athletics, it means you can traverse that ability to other areas of sports. And yet, it's the same story. You find that if it isn't something that is privately sponsored, or there's a huge infusion of private or interest, the public interest and the coffers. Look at the national trials. Okay, beyond the national trials and those who lead up to it, what structure do we have to ensure that these people are constantly being groomed, if it isn't for the private participation and the people who actually pick up these athletes at a time when they think that they have promise? You see, That is not a gap that is difficult to fill, and yet we talk about it. But year in, we seem content with the little progress that is made. There was no scandal with uniforms, so we think that's a good thing.
Yeah, now we are much better.
Yes, the logistics, things worked out, so that's better. Since when does uniform logistics make you run better or throw the javelin better?
Sure. And I'm glad you mentioned Ingebrigtsen of Norway. You saw how he just wheeled away from Timothy Cheruiyot, the world champion in 1500 meters.
Yep.
But you could see that Cheruiyot had nothing left in his tank.
Right.
He didn't have the energy, to keep up with Ingebrigtsen. And one of the things we've seen, not only in athletics, but also in football, in the developed nations, is that any athlete will always be, put under special diet, and you have a team of nutritionists looking at the energy levels of that athlete or footballer, not only during the event, but throughout the year. They have a well thought out program that caters for the nutritional needs of an athlete. And you could see Ingebrigtsen. I want to believe that they were attending to him from minute to minute to ensure that he's hydrated, he's got the supplements in his body that he needed to run under such difficult conditions. I'm not very sure about our case. And I'll borrow again from football where you see somebody like Victor Wanyama when he was at Tottenham.
Yeah.
Anytime, or even Dennis Oliech, anytime they came home after when they came for that break, they would come back with a program on what they should eat, what they should not eat. So for us, these athletes should have professionals, guiding them on what they ought to eat during the competition, or before the competition, or even after the competition. So those are the margins that other countries are beating us, through. So it's a whole question of looking at all the possibilities as to where can we win this race from. What do we do? What do we need to do in terms of training, in terms of the nutrition, psychology, and all that? So, Latif, that is the big elephant in the room that as Kenyans,
that's true.
We have to have that conversation.
Robin, thank you very much for joining us today. So, when are you leaving Japan to come back home?
Yeah, the Standard Group team should be preparing. We have been told to take our COVID tests in time from today, and shock on you or us. COVID tests, they will have to part with the 35,000 yen, roughly 36,000 Kenyan shillings
per person
to take that one test per person.
Whoa!
So, from now, I think after this interview, we are heading to the MPC, that is the media center, where we are taking the tests, and then prepare to come back home. But then coming up in less than 10 days or 11 or so, the Paralympics team is coming to Tokyo.
Yeah.
And Team Kenya is not complete until you also have the Paralympians participating.
Yeah.
So the championship will start on August 24th through to September 5th. So we are looking at, there's a chance that I could remain here to take care of the coverage for the Paralympians. We've done what we could with the able-bodied athletes. So they also need our help. We need to document their history.
Of course we do.
What about the competitions for the under-21s?
It is going on in Nairobi starting 17th. That's the World Championship. So we are hosting at Kasarani. So for 5 days, the world will be turning their eye on us.
That's very good. Asante sana for joining us, Robin. And should you stay there, then we'll also be catching up with you to find out how our team is performing in the Paralympics.
Thank you very much.
It's 28 minutes to 10. Kenya's biggest conversation continues shortly. Let's take this break, take a look at the weather and the traffic and how the roads are looking like. By the way, speaking of weather, Europe is burning. Greece some serious wildfires in Greece. My goodness, you just look at the news and you wonder. So there's a pandemic, and then there's fires all over,
and then there are floods,
and then there are floods in other parts of the world. What is this? What's going on? Are you a firstborn? Are you a firstborn son? I'm not saying anything.
Well, you should have followed the other question. Have you been to Egypt?
Let the people go. Good morning. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
They are stealing every opportunity that you should have. They are stealing your health facilities. They are stealing all the progress that you planned for your child. They are stealing all the benefits that university students should have. Your livelihood is slowly being taken away from you, which means your life is also being slowly taken away from you as you watch.
Cut through the noise and stay in the know by texting the word TSR to 22840 to receive these and more highlights and insights from the Situation Room directly to your mobile phone. Don't miss out on the latest from Kenya's biggest conversation. SMS TSR to 22840.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
Gone are the days when hiring should be about hitting the brick wall, because we understand how much it means to have the ideal candidate working for you and your organization. That's why at Standard Jobs website, we offer the complete employer dashboard that lets you interact fully with applicants, lets you track the full hiring process through a qualified specific smart search tool. What's more, we offer a full-on custom branded page that lets your company stand out with your own to choose custom page. So visit www.standardmedia.co.ke/jobs today and let's help you find the next ideal candidate for you.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Nairobi at 18.
You're
24
listening
will be the high and lows of 15 today. 15 degrees and cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 22 and lows of 14. We'll see lows of 14 in Nakuru, where it's cloudy currently at 17. 17 degrees and mostly cloudy in Eldoret, highs of 21 and lows of 12. 26 will be the high in a rainy Kisumu, currently at 21. It's also raining in Kakamega at 22. We'll go to highs of 25. 28 will be the high in Mombasa, where it continues to rain at 25. It's also raining in Malindi at 26. It'll go to highs of 28. Kampala is partly sunny at 20, highs of 25 and lows of 17. Light rain in Dar es Salaam at 24, highs of 29 and lows of 21. We're looking at sunny conditions at 16 in Johannesburg with highs of 23. It'll come down to lows of 5. It's raining in Lagos at 25 with highs of 29. 31 will be the high in a sunny Kinshasa at 20. Sunny conditions in Beijing are at 30. Highs of 31. 24 will be the high in Paris, where it's sunny at 16. And London's woken up to rain this morning at 14. That'll be the low today, going to highs of 21. And it's early Monday morning in New York. Mostly cloudy conditions at 21. Highs of 29. It'll come back down to lows of 21.
Spice and everything nice. All right.
Spice up your life.
All right, looking much better in most parts. Mombasa Road is not as crazy as it was earlier. Just a little bit of traffic right around that Imara Daima area, but then it smoothens out later as you get towards Cabanas. Most parts of the city looking much better now. Coming down Ngong Road, then towards Community, it's all right. Coming down from Bunyala Road to the roundabout at Haile Selassie, you have a little bit of an issue there, but shouldn't be too bad. Landis Road right around Kamkunji at the roundabout, also some traffic on that part, where it was quite heavy earlier and still seems to be an issue. Kiambu Road, then joining with Muthui Square. Westlands, Muthui Road, coming out to the roundabout, also an issue there as well, but it'll pan out in a short while. Not too bad. Officially out of traffic hour in a few, but let's keep an eye on things. Help us out during the day. SpiceFMKE on Twitter, and you can text as well on 40127.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Kenya's biggest conversation. It continues with all the comments coming in on social media. Kaizen says, given that Julius Yego won gold medal out of personal effort, why didn't Athletics Kenya promote javelin and hammer throw games before Tokyo Olympics? Why is Kenya rewarding medalists less than $1 million shillings? Right? I mean, these are the things that happen. How do we appreciate those that do well for us as a country? How do we recognize them? We keep talking about this. So apart from waiting for them at the airport with Mursik and the dancers and the thing that they wear
and
on
the
the
Christmas
neck.
decorations.
Yes.
Yes.
What else do we do beyond that? Well, and then hosting them to some sumptuous breakfast at one of these hotels along Mombasa Road. And then?
You bid them farewell to their respective homes.
What? It's finished.
It's over.
Yes.
It's over.
And then if you really do well, you might be given... senior elder of the Golden Rock or something of that sort.
And that is only, that's a very rare one. In fact, when Eliud Kipchoge, and we started that campaign on this show, that Eliud Kipchoge should be honored, for what he has done, for participating, by that time it was 13 marathons and winning 12.
The highest possible award should have been given to Eliud Kipchoge.
Yes. He was given the EGH, which, by the way, is the highest civilian award. The CGH is a presidential award. I was campaigning for him to be given that presidential one.
That's the one I think he should get also, because in all honesty, this one feat stands out more than being the president of Kenya. Not that the president is insignificant. That's not what I am saying. In terms of the positive energy and limelight it gives the country, there is no politician who can do that.
Well, that's the truth. Because when you see the gentleman or where he goes, the doors that this has opened for him to be able to represent the country. Because when people look at him, in as much as they look at him as Kipchoge, what else do they look at him as representing Kenya?
Yeah.
It's Kenya. And they say, a Kenyan athlete, a Kenyan, a time...
He's Kenya's most visible ambassador.
For goodness sake, without even opening his mouth. Without even opening his mouth, what he's able to garner for the country is, I don't think anybody else has been able to do it.
All these negative energy that our thieving politicians and government officials, the things they bequeath us, this guy manages people like Kipchoge and the other athletes. They manage to actually re-energize that positive vibe that people have about Kenya. Suddenly, all that bad press about, KEMSA and who, it's forgotten for a while. People feel, this is, it's like injecting new hope and new... Now, how do we reward it?
How do we do that? Because as soon as you won, then there was this conversation as well on social media. Now that we are naming roads left, right, and center, why not name this new one the Mombasa Expressway and call it Eliud Kipchoge Expressway?
After all, it's Express.
It's Express, just like him. Why not? It brings back that conversation of how do we reward those who excel in our society?
There's a discussion within that, and that is, who are these people who determine who should be rewarded and what's their priority? Because you get the impression that they use a yardstick that guarantees that they themselves can also be rewarded at some point.
Yes.
Like this self-gratifying award of state honors. I really have to ask, because you hear so-and-so has got this and you wonder, and what did they get it for exactly?
They done exactly.
Yes. So you can't get it because you're employed in a certain position. No. That should not be. If you're employed in that position and you help bring about something fundamental that changes, then yes, you qualify.
Yeah.
But just being in that position, no.
No. There's even a process that has now been put in place since 2010, how to honor our heroes and state honor and giving them state honors and commendation. But the process is not clear, and that's what we're arguing about even the Francis Atwoli Road. So what was the process of arriving at Nairobi honoring Francis Atwoli with a road? What is it? And why Atwoli? Why not anybody else? Why? How do we arrive at that? I have issues with especially those state ones. What are these Kanjo ones? The state ones. I keep arguing that Eliud Kipchoge, for him to get an EGH, you can see some proper citation of what he's done to get to that level.
Yes.
But he shares that EGH title.
With,
okay, let's see. The deputy presidents that we've had in the country.
All have EGH.
All of them,
yes.
EGH, apart from now those that rose into president, that now became CGH. Yeah? So all the deputy presidents, the former prime minister is EGH, he was a prime minister. Leaders of parliament. So somebody who, for example, is a first-time parliamentarian, but just because they've become leader of majority, they get EGH.
Immediate.
I have a lot of respect for Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, but I'm like, dude, your first stint in parliament was 2013. You became leader of majority in the Senate.
Then.
By that, you become EGH. Same as Raila Odinga, same as...
How?
What criteria are we using? And with that, Kipchoge Keino is not EGH.
Who essentially is...
Paul Tergat is not EGH.
Who put Kenya's name
Catherine
on
Dereba is not EGH.
Kenyans who put the country's name on the map through their personal effort and feat. We're not talking about that.
And not once,
not
repeatedly.
over and over and over again. These are names that if you go anywhere in the world, and we're not just being sensational, go anywhere in the world and call those names, immediately resonates with where? With Kenya.
The first medal winner that we had in this country, Good Chumo.
Yes.
Is he EGH?
Who even remembers?
Do Kenyans know who he is?
First medal ever.
At the Olympics.
Yes, ever.
All those, we haven't gotten to a point where we can honor them properly. What we do is we honor politicians. People who have worked repeatedly.
No, people whom we pay to represent us.
Yes.
Then we are honoring you for representing us for a job for which we pay you. And pay you really well.
You know, we can say is that somebody winning the first gold medal, their first time winning a gold medal at the Olympics, okay, don't give them an EGH, but give them something. Recognize them at some level. You repeatedly win, you keep rising in terms of honors. Until you get to that point where we all agree that this is a national hero. Nobody can argue today that the National Olympic Committee chairman, Paul Tergat, who sits in the IOC, is a national hero. Why is Paul Tergat not recognized even at that order of Golden Heart or even the one below?
If you want to recognize politicians, for instance, why don't you use this yardstick? Okay, you've been elected 3 times. That one, there must be something about you that your people like.
Yes.
And you must have a track record.
So therefore,
we'll honor you because you can see.
Yeah.
You have been a Martin Shikuku-like person who's constantly fighting, and it's not that you fight for the Mwananchi.
Yep.
It's given to you. We
Honor
understand.
And you're elected by the people over and over again.
We understand. That one who's going to argue?
No one.
No one.
Even if we see that it could even be, look, truth be told, it could even be that it's a first-time leader and political leader, and what they've been able to do in terms of their area of jurisdiction is that they've been able to, and it is clearly evident that through their effort and their continued action, people have been able to rise from one level to the next. And to the next, and to the next. Things that were never done in that area before.
Yeah.
I would even say to that point, absolutely. Honor that individual.
With a head of state commendation.
Yes.
I would
It's
say,
a first time.
yes.
Even if you... look, you have just been elected for your first time in parliament, right? You've come in, and within 3 years, there's some evidence.
Yes.
Let us see you sustaining it so that you can get to that level of EGH or even to that level of...
But not wham bam immediately.
Yeah, not at immediately. You've come in...
Let's recognize you by giving you this commendation at this level.
Second-term governors, they've served for what now? 8 years? EGH.
So your performance is not the issue here. It's the position you hold.
Yes. It's not everything else that comes with it. How do we recognize our heroes? How do we look back at those that do well for this country? Helen Obiri is not winning her first medal at the Olympics, has won many medals at the Olympics, at the World Championships, as junior.
Holds an international level recognition.
Yes.
World champion, Olympic record holder. What are we talking about?
No, world record holder.
And here we are, we talk about other people. We don't recognize somebody like that. Faith Kipyegon is not winning her first.
It's not the first.
Right?
No.
She's won others before. When she comes back home, what have we done? Eldoret Express, she faded away. What
Let me give you an example. There is a sprint middle distance runner for the United States. Her name is Allyson Felix.
The
She
400 meter
runs
run.
200 meters. She runs 400 meters.
Yes.
She competes in the 4x100 meters sometimes for the United States team. She finished with another medal in the 400 in this Olympics. And the United States honored her in a way that they have not honored any other athlete, because they said this woman has done what nobody else has been able to do. Went, had a baby, came back, and was still able to compete and progress to medal status. They said, we don't have anybody else like her. They recognize her. They recognize her to a point that it's unbelievable. The United States basketball team, they won. Yes, they did. They right now have a coach who played on the American national team and then now has taken the team to victory. Played, coached, victory. First black woman as a coach, recognized by the United States and saying, nobody else has achieved such a feat. You won't say what you want. Her country will not, you can't touch her because she has been able to do for them. You see these things we're talking about, accolades? Without these individuals, they would not be there. The United States would not have won 7 times consecutively Olympic gold in basketball. Allyson Felix would not have been able to put the United States on the world map as bringing out athletes who are able to...
11th gold medal.
I mean, and who is starting the conversation? The countries where these individuals are from. They're the ones who... They're not waiting for you to come and say, Kenya, fantastic. No, they're starting the conversation themselves because they realize, in as much as we're supporting, at the end of the day, this individual is doing something.
There should be substandards where, you go, you win a medal at the World Championships, at the Olympics, you come back home, there's clear recognition. You automatically join a list.
Hero.
You automatically join a list somewhere. Then, and my argument is we should be honoring, statues and state statues and roads posthumously. It should be clear. Posthumously, there will be a Joe Kadenge road. There will be a Joe Kadenge statue somewhere. You recognize what this person has done. But we don't have, there's nothing. We operate under the whims of some political godfather somewhere who's going to push. Because, the people have come and said, you people, this area, we know who this is. So let's name a stadium after them.
Really? When you take it to the realm of athletics, Kenya is a land of very serious achievers. We have people who've achieved international feats at medical research level.
Yep.
We have academic levels. People who are recognized the world over for the things they have done. And yet here, even your name appearing on that honors list, even if you wake up very early in the morning, it's not going to happen.
Shauri yako.
You that achievement and yourself, you keep it.
Shauri yako.
I mean, consider people who started institutions. I'm talking about, somebody came to my mind when I was thinking of Isipe, Professor Thomas Odhiambo. Okay? You know that people forget, people think that it's a Kenyan organization based in Nairobi and in Bita. It's not a Kenyan organization, it's an international organization. And if you look at the directors who have followed in the footsteps of Thomas Odhiambo, they're all international directors. Okay? Now, you wonder, surely when people rise to that level, should they not hold a certain position in the memory of the country? Say, these are the things these are our Kenyans. So that when you hear of an EGH, you automatically associate it with excellence.
Yes.
Sure.
You know what level, you know what that means.
Yes.
It's consistency, it's,
And you know what I link it to now? Look at almost a lot of the races that we watched occur over the last week, 1.5 weeks. You would find Kenyans who were running for other teams. Let's just call it as it is. Who were running for other countries. Be it Uganda, be it the United States, be it where. These are individuals who made the decision to run for another country. Do you think that they were sleeping one day and they said, you know what? Let me just go and run for Belgium. No.
Let me run for Qatar.
Yeah, just because, I have nothing else to do with my time. I've done it for Kenya and now I'm bored. Let me run for Bahrain. No. Why? Because clearly the conditions were not met, had not been met for them to be able to perform at the level which they could and wanted to. So don't you see a situation whereby individuals like this, who are honored in the manner in which they ought to be, don't you see it having a domino effect then on the performance and the decision to stay by other athletes? That you can see, all right, look at the way in which this man or woman has been honored. I too want to do the same for my country. But is it done? No. So what do you do? Omo.
Next opportunity.
Na bye yo. I go and run for the person who will support me. Yes, no. No, if you look at it properly, if you want to weigh it properly, can you blame these individuals who move?
You cannot.
Can you blame them?
You cannot.
The race that we saw on the podium, there were 3 Kenyans on the podium. The only one that bore Kenya national was one. The other one was Canadian, the other one was American.
You know,
who you blame?
This thing came to the light in the previous century, around in the 1990s. A gentleman by the name of Wilson Kipketer, 800-meter runner. That man did wonders. But he wasn't running for Kenya. He was a Dane. So the point that you're making, all those honors, and then you think the resource, as in the environment that produces these runners, the will that people have, the trajectory of example that people keep following exists. Now, is this not a resource that is easy to nurture? Because it already exists. You know, it's already grown. It keeps growing.
I think one of the things that maybe could happen is looking at a way of involving these successful athletes in the management of sport.
Directly.
Automatically. All right? So that we say Catherine Dereba should automatically be sitting somewhere in the National Olympics Committee or in Athletics Kenya.
Yes.
Automatically, in some way. Humphrey Kayange should not only be recognized by the IOC by being taken there, but should also be somewhere in the Kenya rugby.
For sure.
But Humphrey Kayange is now being recognized up there. Paul Tergat, yes, he campaigned, he won, he's the chairman of the National Olympics Committee, but that's it. He replaced Kipchoge. But you see,
there are very many other people who could actually do the very same thing, as you correctly put it.
If they formed a council of elders, we know what it took for us to go and win gold at the Olympics. And we want to insist that this is what happens, officially and formally, from government. This is a support that we would have wanted to have, but we didn't have. And this time we want to make sure that those who are following in our footsteps, get that support. Those who are preparing for the next Olympics in Paris, right now, this is the support that they require. They need this,
they will start getting
this
now.
and the other, and they get it.
You know,
and not just some politician sitting somewhere and deciding.
Actually, if that thought was actually given to sports, and you carried it on to its logical conclusion, since we know that many of these positions in government require an appointment, why not appoint somebody to a level where a decision-making level, a policy-making level where you have that person?
Yep.
So you can say, folks, this one is really not going to work. And why it's not going to work is this. But yeah, you have people who are professional administrators but have never competed. So yes, they understand the sports in theory. Nothing wrong with that. But that theory should be accompanied by people who've actually done it.
That wisdom is what needs to come in. And that proposal I'm saying is let them be in a council of elders somewhere. See, like the way CCM, before Kikwete, come and dismantled it. CCM had this automatic, if you're a former chairman of the party, after you exit office, you occupy a certain office, the elders of the party. We should have that in the seminar.
And
athletics.
with good reason, because it gave. Actually, the point you make is a valid one. Look at countries where political parties actually hold sway. They have it. And those are the people who we refer to in Kenyan terms as the owners of the party.
Yep.
They create the balance. They have the experience. There are things they understand and they know. So it's difficult for somebody to become an extremist.
Management will be done by those who have gone
the professional managers,
the professional managers. But they will always be looking up to the advice of the council. In our athletics Kenya, is there a council of elders in athletics who sit? They will not agree because, as the proverb tells us, that two wise men cannot agree. They will not agree, but at least they'll give some direction.
Everybody will give a different piece of advice,
Yes.
at least.
They give a certain piece of advice. And this is one way of recognizing them and honoring them.
And also, you see, somebody who's been in the sport, when they speak, those who are then now currently in the sport respect it because they know, this person opened this door that we're now walking
Speaking
through.
out of experience.
They know.
And not just Kenyan experience, they've also experienced other countries and what other countries have done and they're doing. These are conversations that ought to continue. So let's talk about today's proverb and then tell us why you chose this proverb today.
If two wise men always agree, then there is no need for one. It isn't. What caught my attention in this proverb was not so much the wise men, but the point of agreement, right? And I asked myself the question, what does it take for people to see things the same way? And then what does it take for them to see things consistently? And the thing that perhaps takes pole position, this is experience within a similar environment. And I was thinking, oddly enough, my favorite topic, politicians and their ways, similar environment. And so the wisdom that they carry with them is how to benefit themselves.
And they all agree on this.
Yes. So I came to the conclusion, are they really necessary? That is why this proverb was important.
Are all these politicians necessary?
Are they really very necessary? Not really. That's a question I ask myself. And if they are, can we be specific about what it is that they're necessary for?
Their value.
Yes.
We quantify their value.
Yes. We keep assuming generally that there's value. What is it exactly?
Boss.
Guns, blade.
Unataka kiti?
It's like a kiti.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Nduoko, CT Muga, and Eric Latif. Wishing you a lovely day. Now until 11, you have uninterrupted music, and then from 11 up to 2 o'clock, you have Sugar and Spice. And then thereafter, 3 o'clock, taking you home will be Monique on Spice Drive. And then the adults in the room. Who are those adults again?
Barbara Carrigo and Arnold.
Barbara Carrigo
and Arnold.
And Arnold. Those are two.
Arnold.
Barbara Carrigo,
comma, and Arnold.
Oh, Barbara Carrigo and Arnold.
Barbara, comma.
Good morning, it's 10 a.m.
Spice up your life